Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to call the Tuesday, November 12th, 2019 City of Andover Council meeting to order. Start off the roll call to my left.
Caroline Hale, council member.
Troy Tabor, council member.
Ben Lawrence, Mayor.
Clark C.R. Nelson, council member.
Rich Schneider, council member.
Mike Warrington, council member.
Mike Keller, police chief.
Donna Davis, chief financial officer.
Chad Russell, fire chief.
J.T. Klaus, city attorney.
Les Mangus, director, public works.
Susan Renner, city clerk.
Jennifer McCausland, city administrator.
Item 3 this evening is the invocation. I don't believe I see any police chaplains here this evening.
Lord, as we gather today at this meeting, we ask that you will be in our midst. Help us to make decisions that will be pleasing to you. Help us to be able to discuss the matters at hand in a reasonable way, and to be willing to give up having our own way as we do the work set out before us. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
All right. Before we stand up for the pledge, I'd like to welcome a couple members of PAC 533 in attendance this evening. They're here for their citizenship, community, and communication badges. I've asked them to help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Gentlemen, if you'd step up here, please, and the rest of you stand with us. Right here. That'd be great. You start whenever you're ready.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Lieutenant. City of Andover, sir. All right, we will move on to item number 5, which is the public forum. Now, I will state that although the zoning amendments before us this evening are not an open hearing or not a required public hearing, I will allow you to speak when those subjects come up. So if you're here for those items, I'd ask you to please wait. This is a public forum if anybody else would like to talk about any other thing tonight. Everybody's here for the zoning. Anybody else? Okay. We will close that portion of the public hearing and move on to item 6, which is the acceptance of the agenda. My understanding, we added a couple things tonight, but they're already included in this agenda. Is that right?
Yes, Mayor. One item on consent and then one mayoral appointment at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Mike to accept the agenda as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 is the consent agenda. That's items 7.1 through 7.8. I would entertain a motion to approve those.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.8 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Troy to approve the consent agenda as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, I would like to announce that Council Member Brian Schwan has officially resigned. You will notice his absence there at the end of this bench. That is going to leave an open position, which I will probably fill in the next few weeks. So we miss him. He had some family issues that he needed to attend to, and we wish him all the best, but he's officially resigned as of yesterday, today.
As of you accepting, yes.
All right, so we need an official motion to do that. Does anybody want to do that?
I hate to do that, but I will move to accept the resignation of Council Member Brian Schwan.
Second.
A motion by Caroline, a second by Greg to accept Councilman's resignation. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The opposed? Sayonara, Mr. Schwan. All right. Item number 9, we have a vacation case at 1206 West Basswood Drive. It's vacation case VA 2019-02. Would you like to fill us in on that?
Sure, this is a very typical vacation of a front yard utility easement in a developed subdivision, Kaywood subdivision. The owner would like a water well on his property, and since it's in a developed subdivision, he doesn't have access to get around the house with a water well drilling rig. And the front yard is consumed by a platted utility easement. We've sent all the required notices to the utility providers. They have no objection to the vacation of this utility easement, and your planning commission recommends that you accept this vacation.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the Planning Commission recommendation and approve the petition for vacation of the platted 25-foot front yard utility easement located at 1206 West Basswood Drive, Andover, Kansas.
Second.
Motion by CR, second by Mike, to approve the vacation case VA 2019-02 as presented. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 9.2. All right, here we have the zoning amendment for the Heritage on East Kellogg. So here's how I'd like to handle this, if you don't mind. I'll get through my checklist here in a minute. But like I said, this is not a required public hearing. That was at the Planning Commission phase, but I will allow those who would like to speak a chance to speak. I'm also going to allow the applicant opportunity to come up to present this. Then I'm going to let the community speak. I would ask you to please limit your comments to 3 minutes, or at least make them fairly brief if you can. And then I give the applicant a chance for rebuttal, and then we're going to move the discussion to the bench. Okay? So I'm going to call this agenda item zoning case Z 2019-09. It's an application to create a planned unit development and establish a preliminary planned unit development for the Heritage mixed use on property generally located at the northwest corner of South Yorktown Parkway and US 54. Before I proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the council if any of them intend to disqualify themselves or participating in this case because they have a conflict of interest.
No.
All right. Has the city clerk received any protest petitions in this case?
Yes, Mayor Lawrence, our office did receive a form of a petition which staff and council has concluded is not sufficient for purposes of altering the voting requirements, and it has been included in your packets.
So you received one, but it's legally insufficient to require a supermajority of the council.
Correct.
Okay. I'll now ask the council members if they have all received copies of the draft minutes of the Planning Commission meeting for October 15, 2019.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to call on our zoning administrator to give us a brief report and recommendation of the Planning Commission, and then we'll have the applicant come up to see if he has any new information to add.
At their October meeting, the Planning Commission held a lengthy public hearing on this application for a mixed-use planned unit development. You all have the drawings in front of you. It's a mixture of commercial and multifamily residential uses. At the outcome of that public hearing, the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of the proposal with some modifications that were made at the request of the applicant, in that the multifamily residential parcel, or the parcel 1 at the northwest corner of the site, was changed from mixed commercial uses to mixed multifamily uses only. But ultimately, there was a unanimous vote to approve.
Applicant or his agent here, would you like to speak?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Gish, MKEC Engineering, here to represent the applicant. I know we've looked at this site many times before, but just to offer an overview perhaps to some of the neighbors that weren't present last time at the Planning Commission hearing, I could run through quickly just to try to give a flavor of what this development is intended to be, and thus the reason for the zoning uses that we're requesting. So let's see if I can. Okay, so these are just some of the base zoning pieces. As you may recall, the intention here is to create a development that is more of a traditional neighborhood design, so that you have the opportunity to get a little bit back to that older idea of a neighborhood where you have mixed uses that are more or less compatible with one another. And a lot of that has to do with the architecture. So the buildings, if you will, and a lot of the core of our site would intend to be this idea where you could have retail services, things like that. And then adjacent to that, you may have some sort of a multifamily. So in some of these cases, as you can see in these images, there may be retail on the ground floor, maybe there's apartments or such up above. But we're trying to create more of this old downtown kind of feel, but it's we might make it a little more edgy, if you will, in the architecture. But these are just some of the ideas. You can see the signage, all these things are reflected in our request. You can see patio spaces, opportunities for pedestrians in front of the building uses. Here's kind of that retail with multifamily above idea. This is the site plan. We're concentrating. This is currently in design. That's been approved in the past. This area here that's to the south, that is the mixed use. That's what we're here for this evening. These are some of the images I believe some of you have seen, but if the audience hasn't, this is looking south, bird's eye view from Kellogg, north across the site, and you can kind of see in the spine here where we have some existing drainage. We really intend to enhance that, and that land has actually been dedicated or gifted to the city. I believe that's happened now. So there'll be this great amenity, an urban town square, farmer's market kind of thing. Maybe there's a splash park, some things like that, and some event spaces, restaurants, things that are compatible. This is a view looking southward on Yorktown, so that's the street that's been recently completed, and we envision try to engage the community through the sidewalk that's there into the mixed use. This might be a typical storefront that we would have across from the urban town square. And this is the park area that I mentioned. There's several acres in here, and this here will begin very shortly. These improvements, start of next year, and as the big benefit of this linear park is it really will be an opportunity for residents, not only within this piece of development that's currently before you, to take advantage of, but it's really a linkage to the schools, for the neighborhoods to the north, down to, take a weekend stroll down to this Main Street kind of area, if you will, and just be really engaged, a more engaged neighborhood. User-friendly, walking-friendly, things like that. So some of the concerns that I just want to bring up that the neighborhood to the west of the project had were just some issues with some traffic calming. And while we're not here to necessarily solve those tonight, this is zoning, I did just want to briefly mention some things that we discussed or presented. And I've thrown a few pictures up here so the neighborhood could kind of get the idea. But these are things that will be solved later on as we get into design and into final plats going forward. And this isn't even in our first phase, but I just want to show some of these. So there's things like raised mid-block walkways that we might have on the backage road. There are things at intersections where you bring the walkways up, and you're really trying to put the pedestrian, kind of put them in the hierarchy as number one importance, and then work your vehicular right in behind them, but still make them compatible together. And these are just some things that, examples of things that are done in neighborhoods sometimes, whether there's some sort of little traffic device there, or other ones in the mid-block areas to try to help discourage speeding, things like that. Obviously, signage is something that's used most often first. So those are just some of the things that I just wanted to make sure that we're not here to ignore those things. We definitely want to be a good neighbor to everyone around us, and this development really hopes to not only be successful within its own boundaries, but successful for the community. So with that, if there's any questions that you may have,
You flip the lights
I'd be
back
glad
on.
to try to answer those.
Council, any questions for the applicant? Thank you. There we go. All right. At this time, I would ask if anybody's here to speak to this issue. If you have those little cards that we gave you, it really helps our city clerk know who's up here speaking. If you come up to the podium, if you'll hand your card, perfect. Just state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Council, Mayor, all the other city employees. My name is Marcy Lafine. I live at 301 South Sunflower Lane, Andover. I've lived there 22 years. I know many of you maybe didn't live here in Andover at that time. Many of my neighbors have lived there for decades. Some built their houses and still live there. I do appreciate Mr. Gish's recognizing that the traffic concern was a big concern for us. If I could take a moment and just take you back in time a little bit. I know you all weren't on council then, and I know maybe you didn't live here. But for those of us who did, we have seen this land, and we all knew it would be developed. And we're not saying they can't develop it. That's a reality. It sits along Kellogg. We knew that. But we have seen it go from being promised in 97, 2002, 2006. I have all the papers if you guys want to look on public records. You can see we were promised a wall that would separate us from all the development that was going in at the corner, which was originally Dillon's and then became Atwood's. The apartments, I've got all kinds of statements saying that that wall would continue all the way, and that never did. So we've been burned by things that were promised that we're supposed to go through, and then we see things that don't happen. And now here we are. When we were before the Planning Commission, we've been told that the city is pursuing this lifestyle corridor, which I know there was a survey taken of the city citizens at one point in time, but I don't know how we would have ever found out that our neighborhood was slatted to become a backage road, which in your zoning regulations refers to being a higher volume unit. I don't think any of you would like your neighborhood street becoming a high volume traffic area. I appreciate his drawing. The whole concrete outcroppings might be an option, but signage to me doesn't ever address people who want to go quickly. I bet you the police officer could attest to that. But we have concerns because I know your lifestyle corridor study is actually showing you want to tear that wall out and put a through street as part of major backage flow, or that's actually frontage flow, I think, that would then punch through and come alongside the Taco Bell. So our neighborhood would get sandwiched by this high traffic flow, and everybody takes the shortcut. They do. And this would be 60 acres of business and lifestyle corridor thing, and our neighborhood would become that backage entrance. If anybody's familiar at all with our neighborhood, it's exceptionally quiet. We're the largest lots in town. We all have half acres, and it's very, very quiet. It's walkable, bikeable, like he's trying to create. As far as this heritage concept, we are that. We're a close-knit community. We share things, we borrow things. we go to each other's funerals and marriages and things. We're just all involved with each other, and we really don't want to see our neighborhood changed. One thing I have a concern about is the drainage. My neighbor Gary Adams spoke at the Planning Commission. He lives at the corner of Sunset and Willowbrook, and that becomes a river. And if you ever look at any of the satellite images on your own city pages, you'll see the erosion lines. And it runs north to south. Everything in that neighborhood is going west to east, east to west to the midpoint, and it's north to south drainage. And it becomes a river by his house. You add in concrete and houses, your little lakes and things, I hope they can handle that flow. And I already know there's been concerns and complaints already downstream of all the lakes of flooding already that's happening down that way. So I really would like that drainage issue reconsidered. The traffic is a major concern. I know they've reduced it from MXN to MXR, but MXR can still put a hospital literally across the street from my house. I really don't want to hear sirens 24/7 coming to my house. A berm, little trees, whatever isn't going to cut that. So since we've lived there, since we've seen things come and go, we've seen promises made, promises broken, I have concern that if things don't get put in place, then what the regulations allow is still a lot of things that could come beside my house. But where I feel like you guys need to really look is the zoning regulations that say the purpose, and this is 101, to promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare, to prevent inappropriate concentrations of population or traffic, and that goes back to calling Willowbrook a backage road into an R1 neighborhood, or I guess SF1 is what you guys call it now, to prevent unacceptable noise levels, to provide for adequate light and air, and we're concerned with lighting. Number 4 under purpose, it says zoning boundary districts are to form a pattern of compatible land uses, protecting property values. I really have a concern about my property value tanking. I'm concerned about crime rates. Under approval, it says to be compatible with existing and permitted uses on surrounding properties, causing no significant adverse impact on existing uses, and that would be us. Back under the MXR, anything that could come there would be assisted living, skilled nursing, intermediate care facilities, hospitals, medical dental offices, health clinics, rehab homes, halfway houses, adult care centers, child care centers, preschools, boarding houses, multiple family dwellings, and apartment.
Marcy, I don't mean to interrupt you. You've gone on about 6 minutes now,
Okay.
and now you're just reading us the zoning regs, which we've read.
Well, I appreciate the time. I am concerned that if they're not looked at, I'm concerned that I see places in the comprehensive plan that says you guys might subsidize this even. But that's what I wanted to share, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? You could give us your name and address for the record,
My
please?
name's Linda Carlson, 321 Sunflower Lane. I am now living in that house. It's owned by my family. It was built in 1956. We're really, really concerned about the traffic issue. I know she brought that up, but I don't think anybody understands how that's going to affect all our neighborhood and our small streets and our kids playing, and everybody that comes down is going to go through. I know there's other routes, but we're going to have a major traffic issue going through our small subdivision. That's my biggest concern.
Thank you. Anyone else? You could, you'll have to adjust that microphone back and forth. I don't know if you're short or tall, but make sure we can hear you.
Hello, my name's Marty Mapes. I live at 402 East Willowbrook. I'm opposed to this zoning change amendment. My livelihood is, I've worked all my life for this home. I've lived there over 30 years, and none of you would appreciate having commercial businesses across the street. This would be, directly across the street from my driveway, and I'm seeing on his proposed plan some sort of hotel or something that pretty much exits right across the street from my driveway. I didn't move to Andover 30 years ago to live in a commercialized area, and I don't think any of you would like that in your neighborhood, so just consider that, please. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me, Ben?
Yes, I can.
My name is Ron Hole, and I was born and lived in that house that is at 318 Willowbrook. And some of you know my dad, who was on the planning board and has since passed away, and my mom's here, and she lives at 318 Willowbrook. And I want her to be able to live there as long as she wants. But I have deep concerns of whether she's going to be able to live there with the traffic that's going to be introduced. And I state an example. I live at 8315 Peachtree in Wichita in Bonnie Bray. And I don't know if any of you know the conditions of Bonnie Bray before they put in the fence and the barriers to keep Bonnie Bay Street from going to Kellogg to Douglas, but it was a disaster. And over time, we have now got a barrier and a solid fence between Kellogg and the neighborhood. And it has stopped that situation, what was a disaster. And I want you to strongly consider what you're about to propose and approve, is whether that is the option you want to go forward with. Because these people will probably be back asking for adjustments to that road in some condition to stop the traffic. Because I've seen it firsthand and was on the neighborhood association that helped put that fence up. The barrier was up, I had to put the fence up for crime, and the neighborhood paid for it, not the city. I want you strongly to consider what you're about to approve.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Tyler Cajano. I live at 115 Southwest View Road. I'm right on a neighborhood street that Willowbrook will intersect with, that people will use as another road to get to Douglas, as a back road either into the commercial development or out of the commercial development. There is no light in the neighborhood except by Douglas, which makes it the easiest route to turn onto Andover Road. This is going to literally force traffic down my street where I have a 4- and 6-year-old that play with second, third, fourth graders on my street. There are 6 children that live directly across from me that my kids also engage with. So in our neighborhood, we are growing and we are thriving together with young families, people who have been there for decades and decades, who have carried on a heritage of family values and a community. And by putting traffic on our street, that will create a barrier that will break down relationships over time. Now, it is a great pleasure to live in Andover. I went to school, high school here the first 2 years that Andover Central was built. I moved to Washington State. Then I came back because I love Kansas. More importantly, I love the community of Andover. This is where I've decided to bring back my wife and my 2 kids from the state of Washington. I serve in the Air National Guard because I believe in the mission that we do as Kansans that have a global impact. Many of you may not know, but we do incredible work down at McConnell Air Force Base. I bring that up because of what this state has meant to me. I've lived in some of the most beautiful places that people would say, but nothing is like Kansas. Nothing is like right here in this town. Butler County is especially great. We have wonderful people that live here. We have low crime. We have an incredible school system, which is why I didn't buy a cheaper house and pay significantly less property tax to live in Sedgwick County. We chose to live in this school district to go to Sunflower School because it is one of the highest rated elementary schools that we could ask for. And we left Washington State with the best community, the best elementary schools, middle school, and high school because we believe that our kids had a better chance with the school system that's here. We chose this neighborhood because about 8 years ago, before I moved to Washington, I had done repair work in a home on the same street that I live on now and fell in love with how that community is. I love the people, I love the houses, I love the yards that my kids play in, and I love the fact that now my children play with probably 12 different children that are spread out along Westview and Willowbrook. I'm asking you, and again, I really appreciate that you are considering the traffic. I want to thank you for that because that is one of our biggest concerns because my fear is my kid or one of the neighborhood kids will be hit by the traffic that you guys may invite into our neighborhood. I ask you guys that you please make stronger considerations to what we can do to make sure that my neighborhood is safe, that my children are safe, and that we can continue to grow as a neighborhood in our culture, and our heritage, and just our well-being. We have put a lot of hope into this neighborhood, into this house that we are bringing back to life. Just a quick example, we're trying to improve this community. We bought the worst house I feel in the neighborhood where people used to, where the homeless would come, where druggies would come, and they would live terrible lifestyles. And a person was arrested and taken away, and we bought that house from their father because we knew that this house could be redeemed. We knew that this was a place we wanted to be, and I am slowly gutting that place and restoring it. And by inviting all this traffic, you guys will be effectively stealing my work, my sweat, my literal blood that I have poured out in repairing this house so that my family can have a great place to live. Please reconsider what this traffic will do to our neighborhood and our family. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Kenneth Boone. I live at 235 South Sunset Drive in Andover, and I've lived there for about 45 years now. I am really very concerned about the increased traffic by connecting Willowbrook to that development. I am very concerned that it will destroy the character of our neighborhood. So pretty much what the other people were saying. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? One? All right. Does the applicant have anything further to add?
Once again, I just wanted to just remind everyone that our intention is to solve a lot of these things as we get further along. Drainage, traffic control. There's a lot of those things that we've already started thinking about. We've been working alongside city staff to try to create just the way the streets and such are hooked together in manners that do try to discourage just, cutting through neighborhoods. Those things I think are things that can be accomplished, but I did want to remind that the existing zoning on the site was composed of mostly commercial with some zoning transitioning in the new Unified Development Manual to MXR already up in Parcel 1. And so I just want to remind we're trying to make this a more fluid zoning. It kind of has all the components now of what we're after, but they're kind of segmented, much like how probably we did the Dillons years ago, and there's a wall there. This is not the same as that. This is going to be a more compatible zoning setup, and that's the way we've attempted to do our very best to write the provision. So the Planning Commission understood that, and we look forward to continuing to work those details out to the best of our abilities. So with that, I believe I don't have anything further to note.
All right. Does council have any questions for the applicant?
it might be staff instead of applicant, but I'm curious as to comments I heard regarding driving through that neighborhood. And in my mind, I see that neighborhood, it doesn't even have curb and guttered streets, correct? So are we really talking about cutting? I'm not sure that that would even be an ideal plan, but I'm just curious as to how that, if there's some plan for that, since I heard that comment.
Need a map up, please.
So this is Willowbrook. In the corridor study, when the improvements to US 54 occur, the recommendation that was made would be, in addition to a one-way frontage road, that there be some neighborhood connection that would follow on both sides of Kellogg beyond, some distance beyond the freeway. And really, that's where you heard some of the comments that this backage road, its intention is to parallel Kellogg, both north and south. We intentionally tried to create intersections and T's in this concept so that we don't have straight thoroughfares connecting between Yorktown, for instance, and Andover Road over here. So this road bends around. You would have to drive through a neighborhood if you're trying to get over here, through parking lots, things like that. And so there's a means of discouraging through traffic, and that's what this intention of the backage road really is to be that heavier, and I say heavy, but it's a more designated for the traffic that would occur beyond Kellogg.
Jason, I don't mean to stop you, but I think your question was more in tune with what are you going to do with the existing roads that are there?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The existing roads, this development doesn't do anything to deal with that. That would be something that we would work on with staff, and probably a city at large things where we're trying to figure out how to merge these things together, merge streets together. So that at this point.
So you're merging paving into dirt road, gravel roads with no curb and gutter, right? Asphalt, sorry.
There's some dirt in
There's
there.
there's a mix down there, but anyways,
the
I think that's what
intention,
our question pertained to.
So we worked with staff, and once again, these things all have to be worked out in the final plat. But the initial thought that I'll go ahead and share is that we're trying to create an extension of Shea that's paved that would connect in to this street here. It happens to be a dirt road currently, and so there would just be an extension, and if the neighborhood at some point in time decided they wanted to improve it, that could be done through petition, just like it would be over here. So I can't answer what will happen to these streets, but our intent is to take care of anything adjacent to this development in a fair and due process for improving streets.
Right. That answer your question?
The area that would be to the south, south of the Willowbrook okay, is that Willowbrook where the red light is? Okay.
Yes.
So the area to the south is going to be more of the commercial, correct?
This parcel right here, sorry, maybe, this parcel here will be MXR, is what it's proposed to be. And it has, there's restrictions on how high a building can be in a proximity to Sunflower and Willowbrook. There's, and it's intended to be a lower, more compatible transition zoning.
Could you explain to everyone what MXR is?
Yes, it's a mixed residential. So it allows a multitude of residential type uses and office, lighter office type uses, things of that nature.
And its current zoning is commercial, right?
The current zoning on that lot, with the exception of a small sliver, is already an MXR.
What sliver is commercial?
The commercial, and I don't know that I have this. This was in the planning commission packet, but is it in there? Okay. Oh yeah, all the way back. Yeah. So this is the MXR currently. Here's Willowbrook. Here's a sliver of SF2 as current today. And this is the sliver where we've proposed limiting the heights of buildings to no more than 2-story. And we proposed increased landscape in order to provide a transition.
If you can go back to that previous map, please, that you had.
The color rendering.
Nope. Oop, I think it was that, there, that's the one. Can identify for me, so that I can get this in mind, I know where all these places are. Is it apartments, what's the name of the that was built to the
That's
Andover Crossing?
that's
right
that
here.
parcel right there.
Okay, so there's not going to be any streets cutting through there. So then when you move up from that, you're going north, now you're into some of the housing, correct?
Yeah, this.
The larger lots there in the gray area to the
Yeah,
west.
these are the neighbors that spoke.
So I don't see any streets going through anywhere other than, I guess, the one that could be Willowbrook.
Can I ask a question? I know that I've spoke, but
You can't speak from the audience, so hang on a minute. Everybody has to have a chance to hear what's going on here. Hold on a minute.
So fair enough, Ben. I would like to
Hold-
follow up.
I understand. Are you done with questions of the applicant?
Well, I guess I just wanted to get it in my mind where I'm seeing one possible street that could go through, and that is the Willowbrook. Nothing else looks like it next to something, or is it?
Well, it all connects. I mean,
Caroline, I think I can clarify that for you. Ms. Lafine mentioned that Willowbrook Street would be the backage road. That's not correct. Founders Parkway you see there is the backage road alignment. What you don't see on this exhibit is that Founders Parkway would curve to the southwest and connect up over at Andover Road. And
on
that
part of Sunset.
on a portion of somewhat of the alignment of Sunflower. The applicant has offered some access control there such that Sunflower would no longer connect to Founders Parkway, that it would be local access only. So there's a really important piece there that doesn't show on this exhibit.
Let's get to the heart of the matter. Everybody's complaining about traffic, and your complaints are duly noted and understood. But traffic is not part of a zoning case. While we consider it in the back of our minds, it has nothing legally to do with zoning. What we're here to do is decide whether the mixed residential is appropriate for that area. The traffic will be handled at plating. Am I correct? So, while we have to keep that in the back of our mind, what you can't do is not approve or approve something based on traffic. We're talking about zoning. We're talking about land use. And I know it's tough to distinguish and differentiate between the two of them because, yeah, they go together. We know this, but traffic is obviously a big concern to majority of the residents and a lot of people in the community. I would ask the applicant to further consider what you're doing over there. There can be things that can mitigate those concerns. And I understand you're working on them currently. So I think we're going to have to leave it to the traffic engineers and the experts to tell us what could be more appropriate there. Has there been a traffic study completed at all?
No. The traffic analysis goes back to the US 54-400 corridor study where a lot of recommendations were made on access patterns for this highway corridor.
The genesis of this entire design, so everybody knows, is the highway corridor plan passed in 2010 after extensive public input. It's also harkens back to a little bit of our community development plan that has this type of use, this mixed use. You know, the big box days are over. We don't see a lot of those. They're wanting to go smaller, retail with mixed use, with this lifestyle corridor, whatever you want to call it. But this is driven from that highway corridor plan. That was passed and approved almost 10 years ago. So understand your use. Traffic will need to be addressed for sure, but we're here to talk about land use. And if anybody doesn't have anything to add about land use, then we should get on with it. Mr. Hull, you wanted to make one comment.
Yes.
I will allow it this time, but please be brief.
So MXR,
Please do.
just to clarify, to follow up, it wasn't just traffic that I mentioned.
Understood.
It was crime that was introduced into my neighborhood that I see similar patterns in this design. MXR, from page 17 of the Unified Development Manual of City of Andover, MXR is adult care centers, child care centers, boarding houses, I want to repeat that, boarding houses, multiple family dwellings, including apartment buildings and condominiums, townhouses, assisted living, skilled nursing homes, intermediate care, hospitals, medical, dental office, health clinics, rehabilitation houses such as halfway houses. And I will tell you, right now I have a hotel that I regularly deal with behind my property, and it is not fun. I have people, they have no control of what the people that come into that hotel. When I call and complain, the first thing they do is tell me to call the police. So that's the first action I have. I have lights on my home that come on with motion.
So you're
and
concluding
I have
that
dogs,
it's
and I have
not only traffic, but it's traffic and crime.
crime.
Okay, thank you.
Crime, and that is a change in the zoning from single family 2 to MXR.
So, now that we're on the subject of crime, crime is also not a valid reason to consider proper land use. It's not a legal reason. I didn't write the law, folks. It's not. So, let's bring the discussion up to the bench. Let's look at the factors and findings of the Planning Commission and determine if they were accurate or inaccurate, and make a decision. Anybody? Nobody. What you have before you is a Planning Commission recommendation of approval. There is no valid protest petition, even though the petition you submitted is duly noted. You have three choices. Approve it with a simple majority. Override it. Override the Planning Commission's recommendation with how many? 4? Two-thirds. Two-thirds of the governing body, two-thirds of the council. What's two-thirds of, yeah, so you can override it with 4, but you need to come up with some reasons, or return it to the Planning Commission for a request of additional information or consideration of something.
Mr. Mayor, I'll try to get this started by making a motion to adopt the Planning Commission's findings of fact and recommendations for approval of Zone Case Z 2019-09 and approve an ordinance establishing the Heritage Mixed-Use Preliminary Planned Unit Development District and Plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
By CR and a second by Mike to approve this zoning amendment. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple comments. Number one, this is very consistent with the 2010 corridor study. We spent a lot of time, a lot of input by citizens as to what in the world we're going to do when Highway 54 is expanded. And this fits in exactly what we intended at the conclusion of that hearing, and that's what was passed. I think that the zoning request is fair and reasonable. I share the citizens' issues on traffic. I wouldn't want Highway 54 to go through here, but I think there are a lot of things that we can do to mitigate the increased traffic. As far as crime concerned, I also have a little concern on the criming. I don't necessarily agree with the mayor on whether or not the issue of crime is a relevant issue on zoning. I think it is. But I believe that it is an issue that can be solvable by the police department. And I think this is a wonderful project, and I think we need to move forward with it.
Additional discussion?
Clark, I would like to concur with you and thank everyone for coming to speak your mind about this. It is very important. And, you know, this is just not a development that's been thought about for a week. Now, this has been going on for a couple years, 4 years. So, you know, this plan's been out here for a long time. And, you know, obviously, you know, even if you would have come back 4 years ago when you first saw this, I mean, obviously your concerns are going to go straight to the engineer who's listening to it. Because they have to take control of the drainage. They just can't let drainage just come onto you. It just doesn't work that way. And obviously, you know, crime is something that we have a superb police department, and they will take care of that. So I think this is a great development, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this development.
Anyone else like to add anything? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask you to say aye and raise your right hand, or nay and raise your right hand, so we can get an accurate vote. So the motion is to approve the zoning amendment Z 2019-09 based on the findings and factors of the Planning Commission's recommendation. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. All right. We'll move on to item 9.3, unless anyone needs a break for any reason.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, 9.3. This is zoning case Z 2019-11. This is to amend parcel 1 of the Cornerstone Addition Preliminary Plan Unit Development District, generally located at 21st Street, northwest corner of 21st Street and Andover Road. Before we proceed with this hearing, I'll ask the council members if any of them intend to disqualify themselves or discuss or participate in this case because of a conflict of interest.
No.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions from our council on this item before we go too much further. And that is, according to your opinion, or maybe you could tell us what your opinion is on the number of votes necessary for approval or disapproval of this application.
We can get to that if you'll let me start it. It's a little fuzzy, But let me go ahead and continue on opening this item. Has the city clerk received any protest petitions?
Maryland, our office did receive a form of petition which staff and council has concluded will require a 75% approval if the governing body wishes to accept the planning commission's recommendation.
Does that answer your question?
No, it does not.
75%. The governing body formally consists of 6 people. 75% of 6 people is more than 4, but less than 5. So we concluded that it's going to take 5.
Somehow I received an email that said it required 6.
It would have if Councilmember Schwan has not resigned.
It is a requirement of all the members of the governing body, and with the vacancy, it's a requirement of the members of the governing body, and with the resignation, there are only 6 members of the governing body. So a 75% vote will take 5 to pass.
There was a tweak in the law a year or 2 ago that it was 75% of council members. That was changed to 75% of the governing body. And the mayor, although I don't vote, is considered part of the governing body. So we have 6 in the governing body. It requires 4.5 votes, which we're rounding up to 5 because you can't have a half vote.
4.5.
We're rounding 4.5 up to 5.
There you go.
Unless one of you wants to cut yourself in half. Okay. All right.
Appreciate that explanation.
So does that mean that you, the mayor, can actually vote on this then?
Well, that's fuzzy too, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'll now ask the council members if...
Wait a second. We need to know that now.
Why do you need to know that? Is that going to change your opinion on this issue?
I think we need to know what the rules are.
Well, rules are, it requires 5 votes, 5 council member votes, to approve the planning commission recommendation. It also requires 5 votes to overturn the planning commission recommendation, and it will take a simple majority to return it to the planning commission's recommendation, to the planning commission for further information. There's one instance, that the mayor may be permitted to vote. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think you misspoke, though. To actually return it with 6 members, 2/3 would take 4.
Not a simple majority.
No,
Correct.
Yeah.
So 5 to approve it, 4 to return it, 5 to overturn it.
No. 5 to approve it.
Right.
4 to override it.
Just 4?
Yes.
Okay, so we've had this discussion in this event before, and if a submitted valid petition requires a 3/4 vote to approve it, normally it's only required 2/3 to overturn it. But I thought it was, since a valid petition exists, it's going to take 3/4 whether you approve it or override it. Period.
No, to override it, it's quite clear that it takes 2/3, or in this case, 4 votes. It will take 5 to approve it because of the protest petition.
4 to override it.
4 to override it, and a simple majority of
And
3 to return it.
Does that answer your question?
Not fully.
Okay.
The
You want to know if I have the vote?
That is my initial question.
The only, go ahead.
Well, in order to effect a voting change, it has to be adopted by ordinance. And so the mayor can vote on an ordinance or any action whenever the mayor would want to, if it is necessary to effectuate the passage of the ordinance. In this case, the passage of the ordinance is going to take 5 votes. So to be very precise, if the vote is 4-1 and the mayor elected to vote, he could pass the ordinance. Also, as we all know, the mayor is entitled to veto an ordinance if he so chooses.
The only instance where I had the ability to vote would be on a 4-to-1.
And then
But I am
only,
not required to
and
vote.
then only if he was going to vote
In the affirmative.
in the affirmative.
But I'm not required to vote. Good? It's fuzzy. I understand.
I presume then on that basis, I think we can proceed. I think I understand it. I'm not sure that the citizens do.
I'll ask the council members if any of them or all of them have received copies of the draft planning minutes of the Planning Commission for October 15th, 2019.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to handle this the same way. I know there's a lot of you. Please limit your comments, make them brief and concise as you can. I'm going to allow our zoning administrator to give a brief background and recommendation of the Planning Commission. I'm going to allow the applicant to speak, present this program. I'm going to let all you speak that want to speak, and then we'll let the applicant have rebuttal, and then we'll bring the decision to the council. You ready?
Sure. As most of you know, the Cornerstone Planned Unit Development goes all the way back to about year 2000. It was a 505-acre planned unit development with several components: single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial. A hospital was added. There have been numerous amendments over the years. The amendment before you tonight concerns the 40-acre parcel 1 at the northwest corner of Andover Road and 21st Street. The proposal is to add some multifamily uses to the existing business uses. That's something that was brought out at the Planning Commission that wasn't clear to a lot of people, that today it exists as a commercial zoning parcel with a lot of business uses and a maximum height of 45 feet. So I wanted to point that out. During that lengthy public hearing, the applicant did make some concessions to add some separation and some limitations to the number of multifamily units, which ultimately resulted in the Planning Commission recommending approval of the amendment.
Does the applicant or agent wish to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm George Laham, Laham Development Company. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the community, for allowing me to be here to visit with you tonight.
Do we have an Andover address?
No, I
He's
don't.
not.
No, 150 North Market, Wichita, Kansas.
Please address your comments up here. Mr. Liam. I'm not going to engage the audience and you. You address us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. I'm here this evening to present what we would like to do as far as changes to the development, provide some clarification, which I think there needs to be quite a bit of clarification from some of the questions that we have seen posted. I typically have our engineers present these cases whenever we have zoning cases. I'm involved in the development business. I've been out in Andover since 1997, working on Cornerstone. So I've been out here for 22 years, working on this development. We've done quite a bit in Wichita. You're probably familiar with some of our developments, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you're here tonight as citizens because you care. I'm here to do this myself this evening because I care. And I want to make sure that I address your concerns, and I want to make sure we all understand why we're asking for these changes and where we want to go with this. We're very proud of the Cornerstone development. We're proud for what it's done for the Andover community. Today, we've developed approximately 400 homes. We worked with the school district 385 to build Martin Elementary. We donated part of the land to build that school. We donated land to build Cornerstone Park. Although I'm a Wichita resident, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and our favorite park is Cornerstone Park. And that's because Andover does such a great job of taking care of their infrastructure, and we love the way those parks are maintained in this community. We worked very, very hard to bring a hospital to your community, which is one of the best hospitals in America. And we're so fortunate to have Kansas Medical Center and Dr. Ed Bass in this community. It's truly a community asset. We've done our best to work with the city, to be great community partners. Let me tell you, developing in Andover, Kansas is not the easiest place in the world to develop. And that's why I like developing in Andover, because they do things right. They don't make it easy, but they do things right. And I like to do things right. I've tried my best at Cornerstone to do things right. And my intention is to continue to do things right as I finish out this development. We've worked hard for 22 years to do what we've done out here. You care, or you wouldn't be here tonight. And I appreciate that. And I care. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to finish this development like I've done all my developments in Wichita. We're getting close on the residential to, we're at 400. I think we have another less, what do we have, 80 lots left or something? Yeah, something like that. We're getting close to finishing up the residential. Currently, on the parcel that is the subject of tonight's matter is about 36 acres. When we zoned it back in, let me just give you an idea how much that is. And Ben, I'll get moving here, I promise. But 560,000 feet of retail. At Cabela's is 80,000 square feet. If you take the whole Regency Lakes development, that's 420,000 square feet. 420,000 feet on 60 acres. This parcel is 36 acres, and we have the ability to build up to 557,000 square feet. Currently, we can build up to 10 feet of the property line on the west. We can build up to 20 feet of the property line to the north. We can build 45 feet in height. So I could build a Walmart, a Target, whatever, and it would be 4 stories high. That is not going to happen. And the reason for my request to add some flexibility to this zoning is as we bring conclusion to the residential, it's time to get this commercial portion developed. I want some flexibility to be able to bring in some less intensive uses than 557,000 square feet of commercial uses. I've had plenty of opportunities over the last 22 years to put different uses there, but they weren't the right uses that we want as your neighbors. And I want to put the right uses that are amenities to your families. But I think having some residential, whether it's townhomes, single family, I think there's a need for some retirement in the community out here. Yes, we'd like the possibility to do some apartments as well. But whatever we do, we're going to do well. And we want to bring retail. We want to bring some restaurants. I know everybody wants restaurants. I know we'd all love to see a grocery store at this end of Andover. And I've worked very hard to do that. And I don't stop easily. I'm not done. Hopefully I can still bring us a grocery store. But I want the ability to have some flexibility in the planning as we finish out this development. there's been some concerns about traffic. When we built 21st Street, and I say we, because we helped participate in the $8 million cost of building 21st Street from Andover Road to 159th Street. We developed that road. It was designed to handle the traffic for 557,000 square feet of retail. Turn lanes, provisions for signals, and so forth. That was all based on an additional 20,000 cars a day going in and out of this site. Under the plan that I'm asking for this evening, we would go from 20,000 estimated traffic count to 3,000 to 5,000. We've also provided some provisions. I think as Les Menges said earlier, there were some concerns about having multifamily too close to the west property line. And I believe that we've agreed to not build multifamily within 150 feet, which is fine. Real quickly, we've been involved in a few other developments. Just to give you an idea, as I get a little bit passionate about what we do and how we do it. You're familiar with some of our developments. You know Bradley Fair, I take it. Wilson Estates Residential. Wilson Estates Office Park. You know, in Wichita, America, I'm pretty proud of that development. And we saw it to the end. It's 320 acres. And let me tell you, there's not a lot of communities the size of Wichita that have a Bradley Fair. And as you probably know, we just got a Trader Joe's. It only took me 3.5 years to get it. But when I work on something, I work on it hard, and I try to do it right. And yes, I'd love to bring in Trader Joe's to North Andover, but that's probably not going to happen tomorrow. So I'll keep working. The Palazzo development at 13th and Greenwich, with the Warren Theater, the alley, and hopefully you've all been out to see Chicken and Pickle. It's a cool concept, I think is a great asset to our community. Regency Lakes, as I mentioned earlier, with Target, Cabela's, the restaurants. Target would tell you it's one of their favorite community centers that they're in. We manage it, we maintain it, and you know, it's in good shape. We do okay. Not to brag on ourselves or anything, I'm just saying is that we try to take care of what we do, and we try to finish things out correctly. I promise I'm getting close, Ben. Apartments. We built River Vista Apartments. We're not big apartment developers. That's not really what we do. But there was an opportunity in downtown Wichita to build at Douglas and McLean between First Street and Douglas along the river. And I don't know if you've been down there to see River Vista. It's 4 stories. It's really cool. It's a beautiful complex. It's 200 units. What's really neat about it is the people living there work at Coke, they're at Cargill, they're at Cessna, they're at Beach, they're in the medical community. The average age is 30 years old, and 67% of the people living in that complex moved here from outside of Wichita, Kansas. So, again, I encourage you to take a look at it. My only point is, I'm born and raised in Wichita. I have strong roots in Andover, Kansas. I try to be a good community partner. We work with the city on Greater Andover Days, summer concerts, fireworks. When it came to doing the amphitheater, I had a few phone calls from some of our staff members. Who should we use to design? Who should we use to build? Will you help us with the funding? And we were there all the way. And I plan to continue to be here the rest of the way. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. From appearances, it looks like we have a few that want to speak. If you'll hand your card to the city clerk, we will start taking comments.
Council, Mayor, thank you for the time. Just to speak to a couple points from the applicant, I think that some of the developments you have, they are beautiful
Can you
places.
pull, does that microphone go any closer or any higher?
I can bend down, if that
Yeah,
works
we
better.
need a taller mic, obviously. Or turn that volume up.
One thing I will say, River Vista, they're nice apartments, but they belong where they sit. They don't belong in a neighborhood. You know, as you can tell by the attendance here.
Did you
it's,
say your name and address?
Yeah, Justin Nichols, 724 Candlestar Court.
Thank you.
As you see by the attendance tonight, everybody here is vehemently opposed to what is being amended. Just a couple quick things, and I'll try to make this as brief and concise as possible. One thing is I find it very disturbing that of a neighborhood that I believe the applicant said is over 400 homes and about to be built out, only 118 people received a notification of the zoning change. Seems to me like it was something that's tried to be swept under the door and go without notice. I think that's kind of a shady deal. Second, is there going to be... second, I have a question. Are there any public funds being used for this? Are there any tax breaks, tax incentives?
Is that in the NRP? Is that area? Is that corner? I don't recall. Is it?
I do believe it is in the Neighborhood Revitalization Program.
So to encourage growth, the governing body had passed what we call a neighborhood and revitalization program. We extended to corners around the specific property and corners around the city where we were trying to encourage development. What it does is it rebates taxes for the first 5 years, property taxes, I should say. So you still have to pay your taxes, and we rebate 100% of them for 5 years. After the 5 years is gone, then you pay full tilt from then on.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Another question, another issue we have is, it would have been nice to actually have a conversation about what was going on and not just find a letter in the mail to a very select few people. Would have been nice to know.
May I stop you for just a second? You had a question that that you had pointed out on only 108 people got a letter. Les, can you
okay, wait
explain?
Stop. I received your complaints, very similar to you two, and I checked and made sure that we did in fact present a legally valid notification. Is Lance here this evening?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Lance, step up here, please. Do you have a copy of the map of the notification area? And would you, I don't mean to interrupt your time speaking here, but let's get to the bottom of this issue because we had multiple complaints about it. And let's talk about our requirements when it comes to notification. Please. Because I have a feeling a lot of you are talking about that.
Yeah.
So as you can see here in the purple hatched area, this is the legally required notification area for an application to amend a preliminary planned unit development plan. So how you draw this is within the preliminary planned unit to development district, you go within 1,000 feet. So anyone within that 1,000 feet is legally required to get a notice. Outside of the PUD district for 200 feet, which you can see down here. So we as staff in the city are legally obligated to notify only those that are within this area, which is what we did.
So, how is that notification area created? By ordinance, right? By city ordinance or by state statute?
Our city ordinance is actually stronger than the state law. Our city ordinance, because this is a planned unit development, requires notification within 1,000 feet of the subject property within the planned unit development. The state law would only require within 200 feet of the subject property. So we're actually about 5 times further than is required by state law.
So basically the bare minimum of the law instead of the entire neighborhood that's going to be affected.
5 times the amount of the bare minimum.
Well, still, it's 1,000 feet. And as you can see by your map up there, that's a very small section of that neighborhood. But I'll go on. A couple points I want to bring up from the Planning Commission meeting on the 15th of October. Mr. Menga stated that we need a component of residential in close proximity of commercial. There's over 400 homes, and there's about to be another 150 or so across the street. There's going to be plenty of residential there. Mr. Menga also stated that it's more conducive to what people want in this rezone. I'd like to know who those people are, because obviously nobody in this room outside of this group right here wants that. Briefly, I'd like to jump on some of the 14 findings from the Planning Commission on the 15th. Number 6, I won't read them all to you. I'm sure you all are well aware of them. How suitable or unsuitable is the subject property for the current zoning? Staff said the property is suitable for the current permitted uses. If the property is deemed suitable for the current permitted uses, why are we trying to add residential to that? This is also the last major piece of property in this town that can be developed commercial, and you give it away to a 250-unit apartment complex, you can't go back. It's permanent. Number 7, is the length of time the subject property has been vacant or undeveloped in the current zone a factor in the change? Staff real estate market has changed no longer favors big box. Okay, I understand that. But does big box mean move to a 250-unit apartment complex? I don't think so. Number 8, how reasonably well suited will the requested zone change of the subject property be with the current zoning of nearby properties? Staff, commercial usage of the residential components are similar to existing uses. Well, this is very inconsistent and inaccurate. Nearby properties are all 1 or 2 story single family homes and 1-story commercial. There's no 45-foot structures. There's no apartment complexes. Number 9, has a zoning change been requested because conditions in the area of the subject property have changed or are changing? If so, what is the nature and significance of these conditions? Staff, big box to a more mixed-use medical corridor. I didn't hear residential or apartment complex in there. 10, what are current land uses, character, and condition of the subject property and surrounding neighborhood? Staff, mixture of land uses around the property includes single-family, adult care, commercial, and office uses. Again, no high occupancy multifamily development. The key word in this one is character. That does not fit the character of that neighborhood or that corner. Number 11, will the proposed zoning change of subject property allow land uses that might have detrimental effects on nearby property? Staff, no detrimental effects are perceived by adding multifamily as one of the components of mixed use. Now, this is an important one. I'm not going to get on traffic. The mayor stated that we don't need to talk about that, so that's fine.
We can if you want.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not going to get on decreased property value. You all know that'll happen. It just will. It's a fact. But it's going to be a major strain on our schools. Many residents would not have purchased in the area had we known there's going to be an apartment complex put there.
We have a lot behind you that are ready to speak.
What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, just one more thing. I'll make this real brief. I could go on for an hour, so somebody have to cut where I'm going. But, if you want to go into the comprehensive plan, I know that's where a lot of decisions are stemming from. Okay? I get it. But you know what? Building a city is not a sprint, it's a marathon. All right? Why are we trying to put a massive influx of people into that corner in a high occupancy apartment? One thing that the plan says is we don't want to be East Wichita. You put a 250-unit apartment complex on that corner, you are East Wichita. One more component on there is, it says in there that our living room does not match the front door. Put a 250-foot apartment complex on there, that's your living room. So just, please, thank you for your time. Consider what we had to say tonight.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Steve Wilbur. I reside at 605 West Slate in the northern part of Cornerstone Parkway. And I want to kind of approach this from 2 angles. My background, I'm a professional real estate agent, have been full-time for 18 years in this occupation. And there's absolutely no doubt that a population density of an apartment complex will bring the values down. I've seen it over and over, both in my experience in working for sellers and my experience in working for buyers. If I have a 220 to 350,000 majority of the homes there in Cornerstone Park, if I've got a 5-bedroom that is facing that and 3 that are not, the other 3 will sell way before. So there's absolutely no doubt that the absorption rate of those properties that will be in close proximity will not be as high as the others. If you have a low absorption rate, you're going to have lower property values in those areas. And the other point I wanted to make is I have no doubt from the history that this will be a quality development. My question is the retail, and from what you said and what I understand of the history, or I'm sorry, the residential component of this, that was never in the initial plan. So this is an amendment to that. So that is concerned. Also, the secondary, the way I look at this is a fantastic corridor. We've got a north-south corridor running from South Udall, just letting out just south of the corridor, all the way to 254 with great access. So we've got good north-south connections there. And then the east and west corridor, we've got Kellogg that's going to be completely infilled, and that's fine. But this is such a great traffic way that if we let this ride and let Mr. Laham and his group do his thing, they're going to fill this up with better tenants, light commercial and that type of thing that this was originally designed for. So I would just ask the council to really consider this before you vote to include multifamily residential in this area. I think it's the wrong thing to do from a highest and best use standpoint. The commercial guys speak about that a whole lot more than the residential people do, but I just really think that area with the access to the turnpike is just incredible, that we seem to be overlooking that part of the traffic access and bringing more small business, that type of thing, office space into that space, which could backfill slower than building an apartment complex, but it will. What they've done with the 96 corridor and all that, we do see that business backflow. And like the gentleman just said, we certainly have plenty of residential rooftops. I'm sure that they've done all the studies on that, which is very valid. I just don't think that we need multifamily in this area.
That was great timing. You just said that was great timing. You said thank you and the clock went off. Who else wants to speak?
I just want to say your wife is my daughter's kindergarten teacher. She still talks about
She
her.
was
This
a
is
lot
Lena.
of kindergarten.
Yes. My name's Dana Hagee. I live at 714 West Fieldstone Court. And I'm not going to cover everything everybody else has, but I do want to make a few points. So when researching the topic of mixed-use real estate zoning, I'm sure, you've been presented with the studies that show little to no impact on property values or home sales. And I do agree that those are accurate statistics, and they're pulled from whatever studies they've been pulled from, but I don't agree that those numbers apply to Cornerstone and Andover. In fact, the low to no impact statistics that I was able to locate came from studies that were based on areas in cities with high population densities that lack housing near up-and-coming commercial developments that target a more affluent demographic, like the one down on McLean that I've seen, and it is gorgeous. And I love Bradley Fair. That's one of my favorite places to go. Thank you. But the last time I checked, Andover wasn't Boston, and we weren't even downtown Wichita. We just don't have that population density in Cornerstone that would require us to take on 200 multifamily use apartments. Smart growth principles call for the development of more mixed-use real estate areas near transportation hubs and other strategic locations. Not only do we not have public transportation in Andover, but we don't even have a sidewalk that goes from Andover Road's Cornerstone access down to 21st Street. The kids on that end have to go all the way around to use the sidewalk past the pool and then back down again. So you want to put in apartments where there's no sidewalk access on Andover Road. Another interesting fact I came across in a July 2019 article from Architecture and Design, the average lifespan of a home is 40 years, but the average life of an apartment complex is 50 to 60 years. But apartments age quicker because of shared resources. They decline much quicker. So on the back end of your home ownership, that's when your property values can really start to decline if they're near an apartment complex. And another thing, can you help me, because I have a really hard time seeing this map. Can you show me where the Cornerstone, where's the pool that's right off 21st Street? Okay, now where do you want the apartments to go? Can you show me where, like, next, where you want to change it? But wasn't there an area that, Justin, wasn't there?
So there's no specific area determined.
Okay. I just wondered, do you know, do any of you know what the requirement is for a registered sex offender, where they can live within relation to a school in the state of Kansas?
No idea.
There isn't one, which means there's also not one in where they can live in relation to a private community swimming pool. And sitting up high at 45 feet,
Is your
looking out.
assumption then that because it's an apartment,
There are more registered sex offenders that can afford to live in apartments than can residential areas like Cornerstone, and that is a huge concern.
It's a rezoning of the entire lot, the entire boundary. Now there are limitations, I believe, the Planning Commission put on to 150 feet from the west line, property line, but it could essentially go anywhere from east to west and north to south. And I'd ask you to finish up your comments.
Yep, I'm done. I just wanted to say I'm not opposed to multi-use, and I'm not opposed. I knew about the Layham development when I built the house, and I think it's fantastic. I really do. I'm proud to be in a Layham development. I'm proud of my home. I'm proud of my neighborhood. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else would like to speak? Yes, sir. We'll get to you. You'll be next. How's that? Go ahead. Name and address, please.
Yeah, Greg Pease, 614 Candlestar Court in Cornerstone. I think we're all here as a big community sharing the concern that we have with the use. I believe that I'm fumbling for a word. The concessions that Lamb's Group has offered us, as opposed to having a giant commercial property there, is good and valid. I think when you've heard from everybody so far, I think the biggest concern that we have is with the apartments. If you made a carriage home or a townhouse, I think we'd be less opposed to that. It's the idea that there's going to be a 3-story apartment building sitting right next to our houses. We spent a lot of time and effort looking around and choosing this as a location for us, for our schools and for the community. And so the concern is that we're going to get something other than that there. I think the only thing that would be worse in my mind than having a 3-story apartment building 50 feet from our pool or from our playground is having 600,000 square feet of commercial property there. So as we consider this, I think the apartment, taking the apartment off, as an amendment to the restriction, I think that might give us the best resolution to it. I think we all know that the company or the city is going to have to advance. We're going to have to grow. We're going to start getting closer to our commercial involvement, light retail, and so on and so forth. But certainly, we don't have to grow our skyline in any reasonable order. Thank you.
Evening.
Corey Susher, I'm at 2529 North Sandstone Street. Mr. Mayor, Council, and before I get to just briefly what I came to say, I wanted to briefly bring up the issue of the notice. It was noted that the local ordinance is actually 5 times that of the state statute, and then it was noted, I believe, by the mayor that we therefore did 5 times more than what was required. Well, that wouldn't be the case. We're in Andover. We have to follow the local ordinance. So the city did, in fact, do the minimum of what was required, and I can't imagine there was anything stopping. I'm getting faces, but that's what you did. It was 1,000 feet, and they sent it 1,000 feet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The state law is 200 feet.
Right.
The local ordinance for Andover is 1,000 feet.
And this is in Andover, correct? That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did 1,000 feet. That's the minimum, correct? Okay, and I can't imagine there's anything stopping the city from having done the right thing, which was send a letter to every single house in Cornerstone so they know about this and they know about these meetings and what's going on. That didn't happen. And I suspect most of this room knows why that didn't happen. Nonetheless, moving on, there's a number of reasons why we all love to live in Andover. From my perspective, I think at or near the top of that list is its schools. You know, I have a client on a case unrelated to this, but happens to live in Andover. Just the other day I'm talking to him, and I say, how do you get to Andover? Because he tells me he's from Florida. How the heck do you get to Andover from Florida? And he says he looked at the map, they did some research, and they came to Andover because of the schools. They came from Florida to Andover because of the schools. That was shocking. And in fact, myself, my family, my wife and kids, we came here 4 years ago at the time on active duty, and we reached out to the local military spouse network, and it was across the board. Move to Andover, move to Andover, move to Andover. That's the place to be. The schools are the best. And so I was alarmed. I watched the video of the 15 October planning meeting today, or at least every single portion of it that pertained to this particular issue. And the Planning Commission did not mention the potential impact on schools at all. Not a single mention of the schools was brought up by the commission or the staff. And I couldn't believe it. Why the heck are we not dealing with that? Similarly, I wrote an email to all members of the council. I appreciate the 2 that responded. I appreciate the 1 that responded with any actual substance, Mr. Warrington. But even his response, which was to a number of us in here, it did not address the schools. Why the heck aren't we addressing the schools? And so what about those schools? I actually spoke with the principal of Martin Elementary this week. She talks about caps to sizes. So, you know, presumably if you have a cap to classrooms, which they're already at, the caps for 3 to 5 or 3rd to 5th graders is 28. My daughter's in 3rd grade there. She has 28. Most of the classes we see are already there. That said, those caps aren't worth the weight they're written on if you don't have the physical space, the actual rooms, to expand, to bring in another classroom to stay within those caps. And even Mrs. Holder said, quote, they are near capacity at Martin as pertains to physical space. So again, why we're not addressing that, I'm confused. PublicSchoolReview.com, and I know you can find stats and studies for all different things.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up your comments here.
I will. Real quick. Smaller class sizes of no more than 18 students per teacher shows the greatest academic achievement level. It goes on from there. Everything with smaller classes is better. And as far as the property values, Realtor.com, reputable website, real estate folks use it all the time for different things, ranks high concentration of renters is the 3rd leading cause of decreased property values at a rate of 13.8%. That's a $41,400 reduction to a typical $300,000 cornerstone home. Haven't heard a lot about that either. Again, great place to live. That can go away quickly with the actions of a few. And just before I sit down, I want to address one more thing, because it was mentioned earlier, and I don't know if it's going to be an issue with this issue tonight on the agenda, but the last issue, it was brought up by the mayor that the law didn't allow for you guys to take into consideration certain things. Now, there was a mention of the law. I didn't hear any actual laws mentioned, but I just heard the term, the law. So there's actually, the law in Kansas as far as what you guys can take into consideration comes from the Kansas Supreme Court's interpretation of the statutes. Golden versus City of Overland Park. It's a Supreme Court case, goes back to the year I was born, 1978, 224 CAN 591. It has the golden factors. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with these, but 2 of them are the zoning and uses of properties nearby. That's part of the consideration. So if it impacts values, if it overcrowds schools that are nearby, that's part of the consideration. And 2, the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. Again, I laid those out there just to prevent this argument that, oh, we can't deal with that. And obviously, I'm asking to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dr. Joel Pading. I'm a recent resident of 823 Ledgestone Street. Been there living for a year. I actually work in McPherson. If you do the math, it's an hour away. Why I chose to live in Andover was because of the schools. They were the better schools, the best schools that I saw, rating-wise in that local area. So I don't mind taking a hit, driving an hour. But all of a sudden, when I see this big building that's being built, and I haven't heard any discussion as to what's going to be the impact on the schools. Somebody mentioned about how crowded the schools are. My kids, 1 year, they're first grade and fifth grade, and their classrooms are pretty crowded, and I have not seen what's the impact of the schooling with this high-rise building and multi-unit, multi-facility. The other stuff, when I saw the notification of people, I asked my wife, honey, did you get a letter? Because I didn't get one. And I just, through the conversations, that's what I heard about it. The other thing is to say, but we met with a law as to how far we needed to notify. My question is, who is being impacted by this building, a multi-unit apartment, and the school? It's everybody that's there, and we were not all notified about that. So that's my only question. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Andover citizens, my name's Jack Newman. I live at 709 West Cornerstone Court, and I did receive the notice that we did sign against. I manage Atwoods here in Wichita, or in Andover, and I've also developed an office building across from Treescapes, 1145 North Andover Road, and no longer own that. But I do feel like there's two things. One's the schools. Definitely, my kids are grown up now. They're not going to Andover schools, but for the young ones, it's a concern. The other thing that's concerning to me, and number one that hadn't been talked about, is crime. I used to manage 95 apartment units, granted in Wichita. It was called Oliver Square Apartments at the time, and it was constantly, doors kicked in, cars vandalized, all this. And Andover's got a fine police department. I just question, with more apartments, how thin are they going to be stretched? The other thing is property values. We're in a cul-de-sac. Most of my neighbors, $300,000 to $350,000 homes, and some of those values have come down already. So I've seen some of my neighbors sell houses for $280,000, and they got $310,000 in them. I don't want to see that property tax, stay the same on the properties, and the values go down. And I have a feeling that could be what happens as well. So that's basically my concerns. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the time today. I'm Brock Evans, 711 Candlestar Court, firmly within that purple shaded area, and I did not receive a letter. So that's obviously concern number one for me. When we hear, I'm sure there's more than just me, right? Okay. When you've got the minimum 1,000 feet from the property lines, it's more than the state. I appreciate that. 40% of your purple shaded area is vacant land. If it's not part of the ordinance, please change that to whenever you have a large piece of vacant land, they can't vote. Okay? Right? It's very hard for a blade of grass to get out and vote. Okay, crime, schools, property value. Guys, we're talking about the apartments here, right? No one has stood up here and said, man, I do not want a restaurant near me. I do not want a grocery option so I can pick up some simple groceries without having to drive to your establishment at, Target down the road, which is the first 45-foot piece of property to the west of us, okay? Several miles away. Okay, no one's talking about the opposition of that. guys, we're talking about the apartments, okay? I think it's very clear. Cut the apartments out of this completely. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mayor, Council, neighbors. I come tonight to obviously talk about the apartments.
Name and address, please.
Janice Gibbs, 703 West Fieldstone Court. I have lived in Andover almost 20 years. For 3.5 years, I substitute taught in the Andover School District, and my children were at Martin Elementary, so I spent a lot of time at Martin. That was just 1.5 years ago, and I can already tell you that Martin, yes, every class just about was very full, if we're honest, and we as parents, we know that. I stand here with my neighbors just to let you know that this is not why we moved into this beautiful neighborhood and this beautiful community to have an apartment complex that we look at each and every time we drive into our homes. And I think if we're really going to be honest, really honest, no matter how it's developed, no matter how it looks, no matter how it's sold to us, it's still an apartment complex. And none of us, I believe, including everyone that's hearing my voice, would want an apartment complex in their front door as well. Now, over 10 years ago, I fought an apartment complex in Cedar Point, which is off of 13th Street, right across from the cement plant. We moved in. It was my first home in Andover. I had my kids were very small. And we came, and luckily you heard our voice as a community. And the apartment complex, we got it shot down. Now when you drive into that area, there are nice homes, and it all is conducive to what was originally started. I agree with the previous speaker. We're not saying don't bring in neat retail and different things that we really do want to support. We live here, we work hard, we pay good money for our homes. Am I correct? And we want schools that we can continue to be proud of. Even with the expansions right now, our schools are still very full, and it's not just Martin. So I plead with each and every one of you to please think about, do you want an apartment complex every time you turn into the community that you love? Take out the apartments, and let's work together as a group to make a really beautiful front area with the beautiful homes we all take care of. Agreed? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julie Bell. I live at 2207 North Stonegate Circle in Cornerstone. We have only been there for 2.5 years. We moved here for your fine schools, quiet neighborhoods, a safe environment. I am living proof of why you do not want an apartment complex. Where I came from, they did what you're proposing. I lived in a beautiful custom-built house on a lake in a beautiful, beautiful development. And they brought in apartments and townhomes and twin homes all around us. I watched our wonderful schools full of kids that were great children disintegrate. All of my kids' friends moved away. They left. They went somewhere else to go to school because it was no longer safe. They would run over our mailboxes. If you left anything open, your garages got robbed. Your houses got robbed. Everything got destroyed. And this happened in a matter of 5 years. By the time my kids got to middle school, it wasn't safe for them to be in the schools anymore, and there was not enough of a police force to protect them. The cops are at those schools every single day. There isn't a day goes by that there is not a disruptance. And the really hard part is your teachers are no longer getting to teach. they're doing child control. I volunteered in those schools the whole time we lived there. I was very well known by the entire school system. It was no longer fun to volunteer. The kids would look me in the eye, curse me out, and tell me I could not make them learn anything. And they didn't say it that nicely or politely. We moved here because it's safe. My kids can play outside without me worrying about who's going to try to pick them up in a stray car. If you do this, it's not going to have that same feel anymore. Right now, we have this Cornerstone is this amazing development. We've only been there 2.5 years, but the neighbors care about each other. We have great parties. We are all friends. We take care of each other's homes when people are out of town. They have embraced us and welcomed us in. It's like being on another planet, a wonderful planet. If you bring in this apartment complex and I have to look at that every single day and start worrying on whether it's safe for my kids to even walk home from school anymore, I'm going to be very disappointed in all of you. Very. And I'm sure you don't live in there, so you're not going to have to look at it. You just see an economic boom. Well, I'm sorry. Safe neighborhoods, good schools with good children who want to learn and want to grow up and become something in life, that's what's important.
Thank you.
Good evening. I thought it was an ugly sweater contest. Guess I won. Thanks to my wife who didn't catch me before I went out the door. Thank you very much for allowing us to speak here. I'm one of the folks that went around and got the petition votes. Went to 65 homes inside the 1,000 feet. 30 of those homes on the 115 didn't live in Andover. They lived somewhere else. I went and knocked on 65 doors. Do you know how many people that I asked signed the petition out of 65 people over 3 days? Take a guess. Actually, there was one that abstained, but 64 out of the 65 signed the petition. That is the community speaking. As we relate to the zoning change, number 8 on the 14 points, really cool points. I just didn't know we went through those at the Planning Commission. But we talk about how reasonably well suited will the requested zoning change of the subject property be with the current zoning nearby properties. I think there's 2 questions here. Number 1, the height and the size have to change a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty close to the zoning. But there's no 3-story buildings in the surrounding area. And we talk about a big box. What's a big box? There's a Dillon's. It's 45 feet tall at the front, but it's 1. We're not talking 1 here, folks. We're talking 12 to 15 cookie-cutter apartments with 250 dwelling units in that plan. That's a lot of cookie cutters. Hope y'all like Christmas cookies. What would the proposed zoning change to the subject property allow land uses which might have detrimental effects to nearby properties? I think our folks spoke on that a little bit. Whether it increases the value, decreases. I've read the same articles. If you go to Boston, Denver, Virginia, or Seattle, it raises your property value. But those are urban areas. We're Andover, we're a little bit different. Last thing, how would the required zoning change conform to the city comprehensive plan and other adopted master plans and policies? What is the 21st Street? Does anybody know? Is it a node, a medical node maybe? Is it the north thoroughfare for Andover? What happens at 159th Street? Andover ends. Do Do you realize you can help me with this, you have an 8-acre parcel over there behind the, at 159th and Andover? Is that about 8 acres that's available? 6?
What side of the intersection are you referring to?
159th and 21st, I'm
Which
sorry.
side of that?
159th, behind the
East, northwest?
duplexes. North of 21st Street on 159th. 5 acres? 6 acres? Across the street, you may have 20. That's where the fireworks tent is, if anybody shoots off fireworks.
That's not 20. That's barely 5, maybe.
Okay, barely 5. This is 40 acres of prime real estate in Andover. And we're going to put it to apartments? Have some faith, have some vision. Because that is the last premier parcel of land on North Andover that can be utilized for something. Don't let it go to apartments. Don't let that happen. Have the vision. Because you can't go and get it back. You can't say after 5 years, woulda, shoulda, coulda. This is our opportunity. The community has spoke, and they've said, hey, this is not what we want. I would ask for all of you to listen to what everybody had, emotional, factual. Don't give this piece of property up for a quick fix. Some people are going to win. Raise your hands on how many people are here from Andover.
We're not eliciting.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Right here.
We're not going to elicit, engage the audience. If you want to speak,
Okay.
you engage us.
There's a lot of people here that
All
are
right,
concerned.
we can see that.
So there's a lot of people that are affected versus 1 or 2 people that can gain.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm Ben, City Council. I'm Tracy Flores, the mother of Amelia Flores, and I live at 2610 North Fieldstone Street. My concerns this evening are property values. My home is my largest investment, and it is known that apartment complexes do bring down home values, not property, but your home, your actual home values over time. Now, I've heard about the apartment complexes going in, but it's still capable to be, to have businesses built there. But if we add the apartment complexes and it brings our property value or our home values down, that's out of our pockets, not yours. And who's to say in a year from now, when a business hasn't bought into that area, we're going to add more apartment complexes? There's no guarantees. And I'd really like you to reconsider and not put apartment complexes there. Thank you.
Good evening, Councilman, Mayor. My name is Tracy Toy, Dr. Tracy Toy. I've live on 2405 North Sandstone. Been there for about 5 years. First, I'm not here to reiterate what my neighbors are saying. I mean, you've heard it all. I'm all in support of them. The point I want to bring up, though, is, again, I'm at 2405 Sandstone. I'm at the house that the neighbors will agree that there's a house being built that's been there for 5 years, have not gone anywhere, it's still being built. The point of this conversation I want to have to you is the houses surrounding me, the 3 or 4 that has been on the market and have sold the last 2-3 years, their value has been devalued by at least $30,000 to $40,000 just due to the fact because of this house not being built, not being finished, and it's still in progress. as I'm outside playing with my kids, I've got potential home buyers trying to come into our wonderful neighborhood, and they're conversing with me. How's our neighborhood? Oh, I love our neighborhood. It's beautiful. However, what's going on with that house? The point of this conversation is this: yes, this has devalued our the house. That's unfinished house beside my house has been unfinished for X years. We don't know when it's going to be finished. The point I want to bring up is, well, what is our apartment? What are the apartments going to do with the value of our house? If this single house that potentially could be one of the most expensive houses in our neighborhood, according to what he's told me and what he's done to it, potentially could be one of the most expensive houses in our neighborhood. However, it's not finished. We don't know when it's going to get finished. But the point of it is what is the value of these apartments going to do with our values of our house? Just to kind of reiterate what my last neighbor had spoken about. So that's the point I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name's John Cole. I live at 2319 North Silverdale Street. We moved to Wichita area 5 years ago. We lived in the Wilderness Estates, which is a blocked off section around Tallgrass Country Club. There is one entrance in, one entrance out. Due to the apartments that were across the street, we had a lot of traffic. We had quite a bit of crime. You didn't leave your vehicle out in your driveway, even though we lived in a $350,000 to $400,000 home. That's my main concern with apartment complexes. I think multi-family use is what needs to be dropped on this. We lived in Wilderness, like I said, loved Bradley Fair. Definitely will support Bradley Fair-ish type commercial in our neighborhood with maybe some boundaries to cut off some noise. It's just the multi-family use that's given us the problem. My grandfather, who's 95 years old, once said to me, unless you live in Hawaii, the one thing they don't make anymore is new land. This is a very valuable piece of land. Thank you so much.
Christopher Foskey, 709 West Sandstone. I am currently under contract to buy one on Candlestar as well. I moved out of Whitetail. Our car was broken into 3 times over a year and a half. We purchased a home there, beautiful neighborhood, awesome neighbors. They built a apartment complex at Central and 127th called Portofino. Beautiful apartments, ranging between $995 and I believe $1,500, managed by a company called Case. Our crime went up 27%. I understand that Sedgwick County, not Andover, so it's not your problem. But from experience, it went up, right? We moved knowing that we had no specials, right, in my old neighborhood. 5,000 square foot home, beautiful, loved our neighbors, most of whom I went to church with. Over to Cornerstone, I opted to pay the specials, pay the super high property taxes that we have here in Andover because of the place, right? I took on the extra burden to take money out of my family, to pay the specials, pay the taxes for the value that Andover adds. If you diminish that value for short-term goals of a few that are not affected by those, what's that say about our elected officials? And what do you think that's going to do to your career and your neighbor's view of you, right? These are hard facts. You can go to Sedgwick County, ask them. I emailed them. I didn't get a response. Board of Education, I emailed them, didn't get a response. But I did talk to teachers within Martin, Andover Middle, and Andover High. They're all three overcrowded. We're expanding for a reason, right? Can we support, I don't know, 150 units, 200 units, whatever it is? The average family, 1.2 kids. I have 5. I have 5 daughters. We took them out of private school, which is Montessori, to put them in Andover school because you guys were the top rated. I know most of the teachers personally. I work with their husbands out on base. The teachers, as well as the members of our community here, do not want to see apartment complexes going up within the city limits. Leave that to Wichita. They're good at it, right? They're a tightly dense area. They need to go up. They can't go out. Andover, we have a lot of beautiful land, some prime real estate. I'm assuming my neighbors would be okay with, you know, the river or whatever it is up here, 13th and Rock, I believe it is, something along those lines. Retail and commercial, or the Main Street Initiative, which this gentleman has, something similar, where it's retail down below, maybe 2 stories high, residential up top. I understand these guys are in it for profit. I don't want to take anything off their plate. I don't expect them to take anything off of mine. But in building the apartment complex, they're doing just that, right? He has, his record speaks for it, right? He builds beautiful areas. Nobody here has contested that. I understand that he would come in and build another beautiful area, but when it's built, it's done, right? His beautiful area is going to degrade. No different than any of the other apartment complexes you see around Wichita. Yeah, Portofino is a beautiful apartment complex. They spent a lot of money building it. They put a fence all the way around it. That didn't stop the crime. 1 year, council members, 1 year. 3 break-ins in my car. 1 year. I'll ask you to take that into consideration when voting on this land. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Monger, 2249 North Stonegate Circle. I just want to thank all you councilmen. I emailed you guys several times. I'm sure it was obnoxious, but I'm really angry. I moved here a year and a half ago, and I spent an extra $800 a month for the privilege of sending my kids to Martin versus living in Wichita. I have a son that has an IEP, and every day at 3:20, I leave to go down to Prairie Creek on Andover Road. And I have to hurry up and pick up my son and run back to Martin. And if I don't time it right, to pick up my daughter at Martin, and if I don't time it right, I run into all the kids crossing the street to go to the Sunstone apartments. And there are hordes of kids. And I know and I'm sure they're from good families. You know, I know a couple of them are my son's friends, but we don't have room at Martin. And I know an argument was, well, that's not our problem. That's the Andover School Board problem. Well, folks, it is our problem because it affects us, it affects our taxes, it affects our schools. You are our voice. So I'm begging you, please, take the apartments out.
How many more would like to speak? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're going to take about 5 more, guys. Is that all right? I don't need any more. Trust me. Okay. For starters, I told you this is not a public hearing. There's no requirement to do this. Now, we've listened to you, but if you're going to make the same argument repeatedly, which I understand, please say something new. Give us something else to think about. You've pressed home all your points, plenty. So if you have something new, step up and say it. I'm not going to stop you. But if you're going to say the same thing, we've heard it. Okay, we heard it at the Public Commission, the Planning Commission. We read it in the minutes. We watched it on the tape, and we're hearing the same things tonight. Give us something different. Yes. Go ahead. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Jennifer Collins, and I live at 717 West Candlestar Court. Thank you for taking the time to hear us. My husband and I moved into Cornerstone in 2016 for the reason that many of you did, for the excellent schools. My son just began pre-K this year, and I was shocked that his class is so full. I've been in the school many times for different social events that he's had, and all the classes are full. I'm wondering how my daughter, who was just born, how is she going to even fit into this school that's almost full? So I know other people have mentioned that. I would question how the need for an apartment complex was determined. There have been several houses near my house that have sat vacant for 1, 2, 3 years perhaps. So there's plenty of land, plenty of lots that have not yet been developed, so I'm questioning why we need additional housing. And lastly, I would echo that I really appreciate the work that Layham Development has done. Very much appreciate the developments that you have already done, and we look forward to what you might do commercially. We just don't want to see the apartment complex. Thank you.
My name is Scott Boso. I reside at 722 West Slate. That's the very back part of the Cornerstone area. Where's the pointer?
That's it.
This is it? Okay. Oh, okay, right there. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. The one thing I haven't heard addressed is Cornerstone has water retention ponds for all the drainage, correct? City engineer. Okay. This year, with all the rains we had in the spring, we were having a water problem at 21st and Andover Road. All that water was coming out of our ponds, going down this creek, if you want to call it, and I believe the city had to build a retention pond here to keep that water from going on over to Andover, the townhomes that are on back behind the Casey's General Store, and on south to behind Butler and the high school. Now, at the same time, and they don't show it here, but there's also ponds that are up here by the hospital. And that water came down and goes over across into Andover Heights and was almost flooding some of that, and was almost flooding the Cottonwood Elementary School. So the one thing I haven't heard anything, and there's no city drainage here, it's all runoff. I haven't heard anything. If you go put, whether it's retail sales or apartments, you're going to have an awful lot of concrete, and that water's got to go someplace, and somebody has to pay for that, and it's usually the city taxpayers put in all that sewage and stuff like that, because we're already paying the specials in Cornerstone. The specials don't run off until Cornerstone 1 until 2021. And there'll still be specials in the second, third, and fourth editions that's going on for a while. So, I mean, it's kind of a hard deal when we've already had water problems because the ponds were coming up because they were dammed. And we're sending all that water on downstream. Where's it going to go? Thank you.
4 Mile Creek. There's
Well,
over 500 acres in that whole area.
But does that
eventually
constitute-
ended up behind the school, and
does that constitute, though, having to close Andover Road at 21st and Andover because of
that was
the
an aggressive-
water was running over?
that was an aggressive rain.
Well, It's done it more than once. It did it twice, 3 times this year.
Right.
I mean, it almost, right there at Butler County Community College, right there at the
I live in that area. I'm aware of it. Very
northwest corner, northeast corner, excuse me. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm Mindy Kaiser. I'm at 13628 Southwest 70th, so I'm not within the city limits. However, my children do attend Martin. And I was not prepared to get up and speak this evening, so I scribbled down some notes, but I felt motivated to get up because I really, honesty is important to me. And I wanted to address and to clarify something that Mr. Laham said, and that was that Laham Development never owned the land that we're discussing or donated the land that Martin sits on. That was donated by the Kaiser family. That was donated by my husband's family. The original owner of the land, Willard Kaiser, that would be my husband's grandfather, his great-grandchildren attend Martin Elementary. And I can assure you that the Kaiser family, their intent was never for something like this to occur on this land and this property. They value education and they valued this community, and we were thrilled to settle in Andover and to be a part of that legacy and the Andover community legacy. So I just want to make sure that we're all being honest here and upfront. And I really just hope that you all take into consideration all the things that you've heard and all the concerns that have been raised, and to stick to the original plan for this corridor. And thank you for your time.
All right, any more? All right, we'll take 2 more here.
J.J. Schmidt, 2704 Bluestone. Excuse me, I have a cold. We have a 2-story home at right by that roundabout. If you can take a look at that, that thing soars above all the other houses. 2 stories, and that's what you want to build. I mean, that you're our 43-foot roof line or whatever. So just look at that, and you can envision what we want to build here, right? I mean, so all the other houses in Cornerstone are dwarfed by that. Drive down that court, and you can see this thing's massive amongst all the other houses here. Part 2 would be, in my opinion, Butler County building at the corner, of northeast corner, ugliest building I've ever seen. 2 gas stations. Let's do the right thing at this last part of the corner. Let's not mess this up like that Butler County building. Absolute eyesore. 2 gas stations. Let's not, like, I don't even know what word to put with that. There's apartments being developed off of Kellogg right now, if I'm correct. Andover Heights is the Yorktown development, right? Why do we need more apartments? I mean, we have the Sunstone. Per capita, how many apartments do you want to have? How many houses do you want to have? I moved here from Chicago. I don't want Chicago. So, yeah, and I'll address the honesty. Andover, or Cornerstone Park's your favorite park. Never saw you there. Never saw you at that park with your kids, ever. I live there. I'm there all the time.
All right, let's keep your comments addressed up here.
You can show me pictures. I read your body language the whole time you're sitting here. Very, very smug.
Excuse me. Keep your comments addressed up here. Thank you.
Don't yell at me. We elected you. You want to be a one-term mayor?
I'm in my 4th term. Thank you.
I'm interested in.
4th and last term.
My name is Matthew Gormley. I live at 18, just moved in not long ago, so I'm still memorizing my address, but 1830 North 143rd Street East. So my kids go to Wheatland. but not technically in Andover, but I feel like I'm one of you guys. But I think the gentleman didn't say it correctly, but I'd appreciate if you looked like this meant a little more to you.
Say that again?
But that aside, my point is I bought 10 acres. Guy next to me on 143rd Street put up a sign the next day, literally about 2 months after I bought the house, and said, we're going to build 300 tiny homes here tomorrow. I don't know if you guys remember that. Scared the hell out of me. Like my whole livelihood was put in buying these 10 acres in this house, so I put out flyers. We're going to have a little house on the prairie, little thing at my house tomorrow night. This happened. So invited all the people in the surrounding area. So they come to our barn, we're talking, and we had people on South 143rd Street show up. I'm thinking, why are they there? Because of this zoning deal where you guys go out and you only do the bare minimum, they're having tiny homes built on South 143rd Street because they only told about 4 people, because half that acreage is land, and it's not homes. So what I found was it was used as a tactic. And the reason my wife and I decided to move from Washington, D.C. to Andover for the schools and for you guys is because we both looked at each other and thought, they do it right. They care about one another. We want our kids to grow up with people, salty earth type people that look out for one another. And this tactic of doing this, I don't even live in your district, but it angers me because you know how it should have been done. This is a big deal to these folks, and I just feel like the minimum, I get what you meant, so with the state's this and Andover's this, but I just feel like with this type of ordeal, if you're going to do it right, which you said many times up here at the beginning, you're going to do it right, I would have asked that it had been done correctly and just gone to the whole bit there. It would probably have been a little more fair. So, but that's all I have to say.
All right, we need to move on. So, does anybody want a break? All right, let's get after it. We'll bring the discussion back to the bench.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to allow the developer to rebuttal.
If he wants to. Would you like to add anything?
Yes,
Thank you, everyone, for your input this evening. First of all, with regards to the schools are there because you all are there, and we built houses that required schools. And the property taxes from your homes are what pay for those schools. That's why there's 2 schools within a quarter of a mile at 159th and 21st Street. The Andover School District owns 100 acres of land at 29th and 159th Street. I think they've done an excellent job of keeping up with the growth of Andover. And obviously they went out ahead to buy additional ground to continue to keep up with the growth of Andover. That's why they bought the ground. I'm talking right now, please.
You already talked.
Well, I get to talk
Go
again.
through the process.
Longer than any of us.
So, Mindy Kaiser, I was partners with your family for 15 years. You might want to go back and check with your husband and with John and the others about the donation of the land. So I think there's a little bit of clarification that you need to get figured out on that one. That was not cool, by the way. We were partners with the Kaiser family for 15 years and in this land and other ground. So we did donate part of the ground, and just wanted to provide that correction. And I do like Cornerstone Park, by the way. What I'd propose, Mayor, is maybe a couple provisions that might ease some of the concerns of those that have spoken this evening. A couple of proposals I would make would be the following. Help. Oh, we changed the channel. Here's a couple proposals that I would make. One is that there is a tree line that I think you're all familiar with. It's about right in this area. I'll let you point.
Thank you.
I'm not a very good pointer. So from the west property line, which is where Cornerstone Parkway is, to the tree line is about 450 feet. That's about 10 acres of the 40. So a couple of proposals I would make is one is, since that's closest to the homes, I would propose a 2-story limit on any buildings that we build in that area, and we'd be allowed to build retirement, office, medical office, townhomes, single-family residential, anything but multifamily. So that would be a 450-foot buffer away from any of the houses or Cornerstone Parkway in that area. Apartments. Traditional apartments, right. Anything then going east of the tree row, which is the remaining 30 acres, or 26 acres, we would limit any multifamily apartments to the north half, which would back up to the 2 vacant lots and the park. We would limit it to 2 stories, not 3. We would limit the number of units to 160 instead of 250. And that would be, we only build apartments on the north half, east of the tree line, not on the south half along 21st Street. We'd be allowed to do single family or twin homes anywhere on the 36 acres.
What's your ingress, egress plans then for if you were to build traditional apartments on the east side of the tree line? What would your ingress, egress be? Would it be specifically from 21st Street only?
Brian Lindeback, 411 North Webb, MKC Engineering. Yeah, there's access point here. You've seen the drive that was built.
Right.
That's where the primary access would be. Secondary access would be to be determined. I mean, there's certainly access off of Andover Road. There's certainly other access points that would be through other portions of the development, but the primary access would be through the full movement opening right there on the south there.
Okay.
And that just for the record would be for any development scenario, because that is the way Andover Road has been developed, or I'm sorry, 21st Street.
I might ask one question, make sure I understand it.
The lights on, please.
On the south half, you're hoping that would be developed, I'm going to say Bradley Fair Light. Is that still a possibility out there?
Yeah, the goal is to build quality commercial as much as we can. But again, a lot of the reason why we don't have more momentum for commercial is mainly due to the fact that there's no housing density to the north of 29th, nor probably will there be for the foreseeable future. We just don't have the density of people out there. Mayor Ben and I have worked very hard for the last 20 years to attract grocery, restaurants, other retail to the area. But because we don't have the density of people, we don't have the rooftops, it's difficult to attract retail restaurants to the area. And that's why we're asking. We don't want the whole 36 acres into apartments. We're willing to limit, I don't know if I said this earlier, I'm willing to limit that down to 12 acres on the north side that backs up to the vacant lots. Again, just to help provide some tighter parameters. But if we did 12 acres in apartments, maybe we did some twin homes, we did some single family, we did some retirement. Hopefully, if I could, we'd love to build a village and do all commercial. In my business, that's much more profitable than building twin homes or medical office or something like that. So we want a mixed-use development. We don't want the whole thing, obviously, in apartments, but I'm certainly willing to make these limitations to hopefully ease some of the concerns about height, about the number of units, getting them away from the houses. So I'm proposing that to you today.
Does council have any questions for the applicant?
I have one. Would you be opposed to more townhomes or condos? Because that sounds like a lot of people here would rather see a condo or a townhome because obviously you're buying it like a home versus an apartment. Would you add more of those and less apartments?
Well, that's why I'm recommending that we go from 250 to 160. The more townhomes or condominiums that we could build.
I think we had a couple people from that neighborhood actually talked about townhomes and condos.
We'd love to build townhomes and condos, and if there's a market for it, we'd love to do it.
Can I ask a question along those lines?
Yeah.
So how many townhomes or condos can you get per acre?
Engineers? I mean, it depends on how high you want to go, I think is...
Well, 2 stories, or,
9 to 15 is what
9
Jason...
to 15 an acre
Yeah.
versus apartments at...
14 to 20.
13?
14
well,
to 20.
we have a limit, right? What's it limited to? Okay. So let's take the minimum of 14. So the school's data suggests that 14 apartments would generate roughly 14 students. Let me read something here.
I have a statistic for you if you'd like it on apartments and students.
Yeah, give me the statistics for apartments versus single-family homes.
There's 218 units at Sandstone. There's 62 students in your school district.
Okay. So, but if you took 15 acres of single-family homes, that's roughly what, 45? 40 single-family homes that have been averaging in this community 1 to 2 children per unit. That's 80.
2.2, correct.
So we're saying apartments generate more students than single-family homes?
No, that's incorrect.
So tell me the correct math then. Because it's my position that they apartments actually produce way fewer students than single-family homes.
Exactly, that's correct.
Okay.
There are 62.
So, if we don't support apartments, but we support single-family residents, either way, the impact to the school is more with single-family residences or townhomes.
That's correct.
Am I doing my math wrong here? Yeah, but you can get more apartments per acre than you can get a single-family residence.
And I apologize, I know you guys don't want to speak, but I think your apartments are supposed to be 2,000 square feet minimum. Is that correct? Did I read that in the letter?
No.
That'd be huge.
Correct?
That's not correct.
I thought the dwelling was 2,000 feet, 2,000 square foot dwelling.
Let me come to Troy here. I know you've done some research on this. Can you help explain the impact to the school? Even though I will contend it's not our problem for the city. It's not our problem. It's USD 385's issue. You know, we've built 400 homes in that neighborhood over the last 10 years, and every one of them wants to be the last one in Andover, and let's close the gate, and we don't want any more kids because our school is overcrowded. We have built school after school after school after school, and we're going to keep building schools because people keep coming here. So let's go back to this reason.
So what's your question to me?
My question is, which has a greater impact as student population, apartments or single-family homes?
By far, single-family homes.
By far. How do you arrive at that?
Well, for example, Sunstone Apartments has 62 students that are enrolled in the school. Portofino has 13. Cottages at Crestview have 19. Cloud Ridge has 15. Andover Landing has 61. Andover Crossing has 26, and the Prairie Point duplexes south of Martin have 24. So if you were to look at the number of students per apartment unit, and if the proposal is now 160, well, there were 62 with 218 units, right? Then that would be one for every three, roughly, right? You know, rounded. So there would be one student for every 3 homes. So 160 divided by 3 is what?
50.
There you go. So 50 students, if you were to put in the 160, not the 250 or whatever was proposed before, which, by the way, is a compromise, a dramatic compromise. And it's already been stated, too, that the apartment complex is the least amount of money this man can make off of the use of his property, which he's been developing it since, when did you say?
1997.
1997. So it's not like it's a quick thing or it's a quick dollar. He's been working at this for 20 years. That's ridiculous to say it's a quick dollar. Come on. Anyway, so that's a point on that. The other question I think you asked me was, besides just the per unit, was how the schools would be impacted, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I feel like we should build 4 or 5 more schools personally, but you can't afford it because your taxes would go crazy if you were to try to do this. Other than a bond issue, and I guess in my personal opinion, which is irrelevant in this, I would have not built a football stadium or a tennis complex or any of that. I would have just built the new schools because they're needed more than that. It's not fair of me to say that, perhaps, but that's my opinion. So going back to the schools and speaking with Brett White, and actually George had just mentioned it, there's a few things. One is as the school classrooms do grow and the percentage of students per teacher, they try to keep it at 24, but obviously it's going to go over that as more students move in. And by the way, Cornerstone has been the biggest reason why there's been an expansive or explosion of the number of students in Martin. The way that they take care of that is once they hit a specific amount of students, they hire a new teacher, which will bring it down from, I'm going to say, roughly 27, 28 students per class, which is, in my opinion, completely ridiculous high number. But it would drop it down to 20. And then you continue growing and you keep adding new teachers. And there's been talk about the amount of space in Martin, and absolutely that's a problem. And that's why you would build another school, is once that happens and you run out of space, you build a school. There is a few rooms currently that are open. As it was mentioned earlier, it's not completely full with the rooms. There is a little bit of room for expansion, as well as there are kindergartners and preschoolers that are currently at Martin that they already know that if they need to, they can shift those around while they're waiting perhaps for a new school to be built. I'm not an expert on this. I just simply talked with Brett White, who's the school superintendent, and said point blank, do we need to not build these apartments because it's going to ruin our schools? Do we need to quit expanding Cornerstone because it's going to ruin the schools? Do we need to just stop all development in all of Andover because it's ruining our schools? Of course not. Of course not. There is no school system on this planet, well, that's not true, in this country that would say, yeah, we don't want any more students, stop here. It's a public school system. They're built to expand. You have some amazing professionals and teachers and staff and the people that manage the school board that know all this. They're not dumb. They are aware of what's going on in North Andover. It's completely ridiculous. They're almost at 1,000 people now at the Andover High School. That needs to be changed, either expanded or another school built. They know it. They're working on it. They're planning for it. They're not dumb. They're planning for your area too. It's not like any of this is new to us. But going back to what Ben said, but I'll have to cross it with what one of the young ladies that mentioned earlier, is the city of Andover, when we look at zoning, which is what this is all about today, it's about a zoning case. It's not city planning. It's not saying, okay, the population can only grow to X number of people and we're going to have to stop. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about allowing a developer who's been working on a project since 1997 to perhaps have another use for it. We're not putting up some ridiculous shops. We're not putting up a Walmart, which, by the way, would devalue your homes. A small apartment complex is not. If you were to look at the back of a Walmart that's 45 feet tall out of the back of your home versus an apartment complex out of the back of your home, are you telling me that the price of your value of your home would be lower or higher?
Both be lower. They tried that at 21st and...
In Andover, there are apartment complexes today.
Does anybody know the stats on what Sunstone did to Reflection Lake?
Yeah.
That's primarily a rental community.
You can go look it up right now. Yeah, certainly go. Are there no rental houses in Cornerstone at all? Is there one? Are you renting out? I'm just kidding. I know you're not going to say that. So in Crestview, which is where I live, Crescent Lakes, sorry, not Crestview. Crescent Lakes, we have a whole bunch of rentals. We don't have an apartment complex. So you can't call it. I can't afford to build an apartment complex. But my point is really that the research that I did was on Sunstone and what it did to the value of the homes behind it. They didn't change. You can go look it up, both the Butler County website, and there's several places online that you can look up what they've sold for. What I don't know is what they were originally sold for. I can only go back and look to see what they were sold for again.
Because all those builders left. They
Okay.
didn't want to develop in that area anymore. Big builders.
Maybe.
Didn't want to finish.
Okay, let's move on.
Why are departments so key to this whole deal, sir? Why are they the cornerstone?
We're not asking questions. We're going to reserve commentary to the bench now. Mr. Lamb, you can sit down.
Thank you.
And we'll leave it to the council. So you've heard the pros and cons. You've got the recommendation from the planning commission. You've heard or had an explanation of how the vote could go or should go, depending on if you tie or don't. But so let's review that again. So it takes 5 votes from this council because of the protest petition to approve the planning commission's recommendation, right? It takes at least 4 to overturn the planning commission's recommendation, right? Okay. And then it takes a simple majority, 3, to return it to the planning commission for further consideration, which I don't know that that's a viable option. I don't know if that's going to get any good or you'd get a different opinion. Now, what Mr. Lamb has offered, though, is a concession. It is not what the planning commission recommended to you. So, if you were to take what he's saying and limit the number of apartments, right, and limit their location, that would be apparently east of the hedgerow, you would have to override the planning commission's recommendation to do that.
I have a question about that. Since it is a change, wouldn't it really need to go back to planning commission to look at it again?
The answer to that question is absolutely not. You have the authority to do that.
We have the authority to override the planning commission.
You do. With any conditions you want to add.
So we could add conditions at this point on our vote.
You may.
As a PUD in special use, that's correct, right?
That is correct. Yep. That's what I'm telling you. You have that ability. If you'd like to send it back to planning commission, you have that ability too, and let them make all the changes there and then send it back up. But you have the ability to do whatever you'd like to do this evening. Were you going to say something?
I vote then that your vote doesn't count.
I don't know that I'm going to vote. I never said whether I was going to vote or not vote. I'm still mayor till January, okay? So let's make that clear. You want to say something?
Since there seems to be an interest in precise circumstances, if you were to override the Planning Commission with additional changes, but nonetheless pass the ordinance making the amendment with changes with the protest petition, that would still require 75% or 5 votes.
I said,
Yes.
start this meeting. And you said 4, and I said 5, and I said, you said 4, and I said 5.
I think to be clear, to override and change the Planning Commission's recommendation only takes 4, but to override it with additional conditions, but nonetheless approve the zoning change still requires the 75%. I was just trying to draw a distinction there. I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I would like a clarification on something, just to make sure that I'm understanding.
Sure.
That one of the challenges was the height of 3 stories at 45 feet, and my understanding is that George had said, okay, the concession is that it'll be a 2-story, not a 3-story, so that was, but what about the height? Still 45 feet, or is it 30 feet, or?
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So the PUD has a definition of what a story is. It's the distance between the, and this is if you look at Webster, it tells you what a story is as well. It's the distance between the main floor to the roof line. So if you had two floors, it's that distance between. So
What is, just tell us, give us the number.
we could be satisfied with a 35-foot height, which is also the same as all of Cornerstone residential. It's the very same height as the rest of the residential houses, single family and so forth. So I think to be compatible, we could look at a 35 height, which is again exact same, and it's per code. So.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question.
Good question. All right, council. What would y'all like to do?
Can I ask some questions?
Go ahead.
I'd like to address Chief Keller about crime in the apartment areas, some of the newer, what is it, Sunstone?
Sunstone.
Just, and the neighborhood around there, did we see any big jump in crime around there?
We actually pulled the numbers this week from 2012 to the current in the Reflection Lakes area. We looked at the crime there, and then the crime that's occurred in the apartments at Sunstone since I believe they were built in or opened up in early 14 was the first time we received a call there. Since 2014. We've really seen no crime increase in the Reflection Lakes area. As a matter of fact, I think the 2018 and year-to-date 2019 probably has the lowest number of crimes, at least back to 2012.
The one thing we did notice through that area was that people going to the YMCA, going across, so the traffic has been their concern, right? We haven't been
Okay.
talking about crime.
What we looked at was crime, but definitely with the YMCA and the Far Off Center being built, we've seen a big increase in traffic through Minnehaha and with that speeders that we're working on.
To be clear, though, we have attributed that to the YMCA more than likely, not to the apartments, to be clear.
The
on that
traffic?
point. Yes, yes.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think the apartments connect to that, really.
Yeah, I was going to say
It's really all the YMCA and Far Off traffic. As a matter of fact, in the last 5 weeks, we've issued 26 tickets, if I recall right, on Minnehaha. And of those 26 tickets, 23 of them were non-Andover residents.
All right, I have one more concern, and the city staff can probably address this one for me. As I listen to everyone, I think back about when I got out of college and married my husband, and we went to live in an apartment, and I'm beginning to think we were bad people, evidently, according to everybody, but that's kind of usually what happens when you're young in life. And so we were apartment dwellers for about 3 years before we had saved up enough to buy our first, and we bought a townhome, and 4 years later, we built our very first home. So, you know, it's kind of that American dream kind of thing, and now as I approach my senior years, and my husband has passed away, I'm starting to think again about where to live next. And again, I start thinking about some of the apartment dwellings. So, I mean, I hear everybody and I understand that, but I don't know, part of me just thinks it's kind of really unfair to act like it's a bunch of love lives that live in apartments. So I just want to say that. Yet on the other hand, I'm hearing your concerns. And so I want to know about the apartments. We have one, the Heritage Project coming in. How many units is that projected to be? And so I want to think, how many apartment complexes do we want to take in, and how fast do we take those in? So we have the Sunstone, and now we have the Heritage. How many are coming there? Or the total number and the height?
The total number in an apartment complex in the Heritage. Guess I don't recall.
We are talking about it there, aren't we? Can we?
It's multi-family, but
I thought it was apartments as well.
No.
There was no apartments.
Okay, so Mr. Gisher agrees with that. There's no apartments for that one?
I don't know that they've gotten to that level of detail, and with MKEC, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they have the flexibility to do multifamily, which could include condos, could include townhomes, could include apartments, but we're not at that level of detail yet. That's not defined.
Okay, I thought there was talk of it, but it just could happen. We just don't know yet. Okay.
All right, who else? Need a motion to do something. Can't leave it.
Well, I would think, personally, when we've heard Mr. Laham explain something, I think people would rather really have it in black and white and really know for sure, and then address any other objections they might have. I hate to do this to the Planning Commission. I hate to do it to us again, but I almost feel like we should just send this back to the Planning Commission with Mr. Laham presenting his changes.
Is that a?
That's a motion.
Is that a motion? Is there a second?
A second.
Once again, I'll ask if there's a second. Motion fails for lack of a second. Any other motions? I got all night. That awkward silence.
Mr. Mayor,
CR.
I move to adopt the Planning Commission's findings of fact and recommendations for approval of zoning case Z 2019-11 and approve an ordinance establishing the Cornerstone Edition preliminary planned unit development district and plan amendment number 8. And by that I incorporate the changes that have been made by Mr. Laham here this evening.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Let me clarify this motion that was made by Council President Nelson and Councilmember Tabor. The motion was to override the Planning Commission's recommendation and to approve zoning case Z 2019-09 and approve the ordinance establishing the the Cornerstone Edition preliminary PUD by setting conditions of the apartments are limited to 160 units. They are no more than 2 stories high, and they cannot be, I don't know what the legal definition is, they cannot be west of the hedgerow, the current hedgerow there. Was that an accurate interpretation of your motion? Was that an accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
The second one along the road there.
That's a really jacked up way of saying it, so is that a proper motion?
Actually, we'd like to just clarify the motion, Mr. Mayor, if that's all right. Unless, do you want to review the requirements as we understood them to make sure all parties agree, including the parties making the motion and the second?
Go ahead.
I think we've agreed on what we think we heard was that the apartment development would be limited to 160 maximum dwelling units, that the apartments would be limited to 2 stories in height, and that the apartments would be located no closer than 450 feet to the west property line, and that the apartments be located on the north half of the parcel.
Was that the spirit of your motion?
That's exactly what I intended to say. I will amend my motion to be consistent with what Mr. Mangus has just stated. The only change, Les, would be whether we have agreed to the 35-foot maximum as opposed to 2 stories.
That's fine. 450 feet guaranteed to get you to the east side of that hedgerow. We make sure that the hedgerow stays and it is on the other side of the hedgerow.
I don't know the answer to that question,
Well,
but
the statement made by Mr. Laham was it would be east of the tree row.
Yeah, true.
You're positive
Okay,
it's 450?
I can't have any more comments from the audience.
Okay.
If you have, Les, is it 450 feet or is it not?
The engineer just said it is.
I could speak to 450. I measured it earlier today with the thought that this could be an issue.
450 feet.
It is 450
east
on the hedgerow.
of the hedgerow. Okay.
Okay.
So, your motion was to override the planning commission's recommendation and with adding conditions of limiting the apartments to 160 units, limiting the heights to 35 feet of said apartments, limiting them to 450 foot east of, to the east edge of that parcel. What else was the fourth thing?
Height.
I said height.
That apartments could only be built on the north half of the property.
And the north half of the property. Okay. Is that your second?
It is, and to clarify a shouted out question, the north, if you look at the 2 parcels that are, I guess, diagonally striped purple or red or whatever, right above it, it would be below that. So the north would be where it butts up against
The 2 vacant parcels.
the 2 vacant parcels.
So only in the green area.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is everybody clear on what the motion is?
I do want to clarify that they can do duplexes, they can do condos. We are talking about apartments that are prohibited in this area. Be very
The rest
clear.
of the remaining uses
Exist,
valid.
but I just want to be clear. That includes duplexes, condos, just to be very clear.
Like to.
Yeah, and to your point, Mayor, is that we would also have the ability, I think, to your point, is to be able to do twin homes, single-family homes, condominiums on any of the property.
Right.
But
In
we
addition
would
to the
be
uses of the
limited west of the hedgerow to 2 stories. We wouldn't do anything higher than that. Sorry.
Our motion is what matters, not what
Okay,
he's
thank you,
saying.
George.
Are we up, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor, are we
listen
up
me,
to
listen
discussion
me.
now?
Okay, yeah, we're to discussion, so
All right.
spit it out.
Okay, so when you say twin homes, when there's twin homes being mentioned, I'm thinking of duplexes. And I would like it if you guys would amend your motion to remove duplexes from that.
Why?
There's already, what, 40 of them over there?
On that south.
West side.
Is it? Okay, maybe some. There's also some over on the southeast side too, I believe, behind one of the gas stations.
That's Andover Landing, yeah, there's
Yeah.
a bunch over there.
I think that he could get more value with a condo or more than a duplex. I think a
disagree with that,
condo
but
would
it's-
look better.
Should it be the market that drives it, not him, or not your thought that he could get better value out of
Yeah.
something? Should it not be the market that dictates that? I don't
Well,
feel like I want to
maybe so.
restrict.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get down to the heart of the matter. CR, do you want to amend your motion to include that? Or you want to leave your motion the way it is?
I'd like to try to leave it the way
Sure.
it is.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I have more further discussion, sure.
Go for it.
Because apparently I like to talk too much, as my wife says, so I apologize in advance. There's a few issues that were voiced in emails at the Planning Commission, through social media, which you guys did an exceptional job of using, by the way, especially the next door stuff, as well as here tonight. Several things that were mentioned through that wasn't mentioned tonight, which is kind of surprising. But a couple things I'd like to address, but start off by stating a misconception that was not answered or pointed out tonight, but certainly was online and through email. The city does not dictate what specific businesses are built where. We can't just say, we want a diner here, and it appears. It's not the job of the city council nor the mayor, and we can't make that promise. That is something that I have heard now a few times, is that we promised, or it was promised that these things could be there. It's certainly not something we can do. We do not dictate that apartments must go in a specific piece of land either. It's really up to the market and the land developer to dictate that. What we do as a city with residents and others throughout the community, though, is define a long-term development plan, which you guys have brought up today, and then we zone appropriately for the hope and the desires of the community to grow in that way. Obviously, it's been brought out tonight that Cornerstone does not agree with the apartments, and there was already concessions prior, and there's been some pretty big ones tonight, especially in height and volume, and with a better understanding perhaps of how many students that would actually add to the schools. But over time, things change. Markets showed now that younger professionals prefer not to own homes, but to live closer to amenities, and with an apartment complex this way, and with the hope of adding additional local, diners or restaurants or park or whatever, that's really what millennials are looking for, and that's who's moving in to our city now, if you look at Sunstone and average ages and that kind of thing.
God help us all.
Yeah. So that's one piece. Now back to a couple of the issues which I would say are really fears as much as issues. And I think one of the biggest fears is the schools and the overcrowding that's happening in northern Andover. We talked about it already. I don't need to talk more about it. I think that certainly that needs to be addressed, and we need to work on school size, class size, that kind of thing. But the city council doesn't do that. We don't build schools. We don't dictate that you can or cannot live somewhere because we fear that it's going to overtax the schools. What happens is the school system themselves takes care of that, which they do. We've had several new schools built lately, as well as a $180 million bond, which has expanded all the schools. Every school was touched. So, schools, when I talked with Brett, he said that the schools do not have any stance on the development of new developments like apartment complexes or Cornerstone that people go in because they don't want to. They don't want to get into that battle. Their job is to, whenever a student is here, is to appropriately educate them. The schools are funded by $4,436 plus on a per student basis. And it's stated that the more students enrolled in our school system, the more that the schools can do because they have more money for their students. There's already in place a process to deal with overcrowding, which I mentioned, where there's a threshold of student-to-teacher ratio is met, an additional teacher is added, and it drops down the ratio. This has already happened for both the first and second grades at Martin Elementary, where they have 4 instead of 3 teachers, although obviously it should happen with 3rd, 4th grade as well. We all want a lower ratio than what our children have in school, especially in public schools. It wouldn't matter where you lived. Everyone has the exact same problem. We want fewer kids in our classrooms. The Andover school system is ran well and is flexible enough to handle more students. Tops rated schools that we all enjoy it. It's due to this, it's not just, the top rated schools is not just due to the student ratio in the classrooms. It's due to the fact that the majority of parents, including you, including me, in our community are very involved with our children's education, and we actively support our teachers. That's something that doesn't happen in a lot of places just west of us. Also, we have top-level teachers administration in our schools, and this wouldn't change with an additional 160 apartment homes. Another fear is that adding apartment homes near Cornerstone will reduce the value of your homes. This is a little tougher to gauge. As I had mentioned earlier, I looked at the Butler County Real Estate Information Search, which is annoying to go through, but please do. If you're that worried about it, go look. Go absolutely look at all the homes and look and figure it out. Also, one thing that is really tough to do is to see what homes were bought for to begin with and then sold for later. You can find a very few over in Reflection Lakes, but there's other places in Andover that have apartment complexes. You can do the same. When I looked through the few properties right behind Sunstone Apartments and Reflection Lakes, there was no decrease. There was no increase, but there was no decrease in the property values. Also, I've not heard from anyone in any housing division near any apartment homes in Andover, and there are several who are complaining about the property values going down. I've heard a lot about what's happened in East Wichita here or in other places in the country, but not in Andover. And that's what we're talking about, is Andover. If anything, people, I hate to say this, but people would like to pay less taxes, and if property values went down, so would your taxes, but I don't suggest that at all. If property value goes down, absolutely your property taxes would go down. No, you're right, it's a terrible point. I take it back.
That's what your wife said.
That's pretty bad. That being said, the current zoning and previously desired use for the property we're talking about tonight was a big box store, meaning Walmart, right? I mean, I can't believe that those who live in Cornerstone would believe that putting a Walmart on the property would have better values for your property than a 162-story high apartment complex might. A third fear discussed is the idea that apartment homes would bring crime to the area. I don't know if you realize it or not, but there are several apartments and multifamily home developments in Andover currently, and no, we don't have a crime problem in Andover. As a matter of fact, Andover is one of the safest cities in the region. Andoverites expect this in our police and fire departments, ran by Chief Keller and Chief Russell, deliver. We've been recognized as both the top city for young families in Kansas as well as in the top 50 cities in the United States to live in with the existing apartment complexes that we have already. This one would make no difference. There are additional fears dealing with traffic, school crossings, aesthetics, and other things that are handled as needed not just here, but everywhere in the city. They're taken care of as they come up. They always have been, and will be taken care of here as well. So when I went through all of the emails that were out there, there's a lot more fears than just that, but these seem to be the ones that go along with everybody. I researched it all. I wouldn't look at it all. I think you guys, I hope you've done the same, and I don't think it's going to alleviate too much of how you feel about things, but we don't just sit here and just not listen to you, and I don't know why you would think that, or in a lot of the comments it said that we don't care and we don't have skin in the game and that we're up here doing whatever we want. It's not true at all. All of us here research, look, Go and see what's going on, figure out, learn. We're all residents here as well. None of us are developers up here. We're here to be citizens. And what we are tasked with doing when we're elected to this position is look at all of Andover, look at the growth patterns, the comprehensive development plans, the crime patterns, the growth patterns, and make the best decisions that we can for Andover as a whole. Doesn't help you tonight. I know you guys all don't want to have this tonight, and I don't think it would matter what I said. You would not change your mind, that's fine. But I would like you to know that we care, and we research, and we seek to understand, and we make the best decision we can for the all of Andover when we vote on things like this. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. You still clear on the motion?
Could I have one more comment? I want to be clear on the diagonal land above that's north of, is that part of the Layham property as well, or does that belong to someone else, or, who did, you know, it's like empty land right now.
The purple?
Purple, the diagonal stripe land.
That property is owned by someone else other than Layham Development.
Okay, so they haven't planned to do anything with it at all, and nobody knows.
There have been some matters that have come to the Planning Commission many years ago, but nothing of current.
Okay, we have a motion, first and a second. Further discussion. We'll call it the same way. All those in favor, I want you to raise your right hand and say yay. Same thing on nay. Okay? Motion by CR, second by Troy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Was that 5? Motion carries. Calling a 10-minute recess. Okay, let's call this meeting back to order. I believe we're on to item number 10, which is Yorktown Parkway project. You want me to
Yes,
read this?
part of the Yorktown Parkway development was a landscaping plan that we worked out with not only the developers of the Heritage Project, but our own transportation engineers. This list of landscape materials is for the medians. The Heritage developers will landscape the parking areas outside of the sidewalk. But this is the first purchase to get plants in the ground yet this fall in order to get the landscape started.
Yay.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Mayor,
Troy?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the quote from Site One Landscape Supply for landscape materials for the Yorktown Parkway Phase 1 project in the amount of $4,402.56.
I'll second it.
Motion by Troy, second by Mike to approve the landscape Phase 1 purchase as presented. Further discussion.
I'm so glad to start seeing landscaping go in.
No kidding.
And we can continue that and make it heavier on the way up.
Mike, we realize that this is not a lot of landscape for a half a mile segment of road, but this first half mile has a lot of breaks in the access for turn days
There's a lot of
and so
breaks,
forth,
yep.
so it's very limited. What you'll see as we progress north through the school site and into the park, we've got a lot better opportunities for landscaping.
Glad. Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We didn't need to raise our hand on that one.
No. Move on to item 11, which is North Andover Road Project. We have an engineering agreement.
Throughout the development of all of the improvements to the North Andover Road USD 385 campus, we have worked with the school district, their engineer, our engineers, Trans Systems on hire through our on-call agreement, and come up with a plan for some improvements to North Andover Road that will greatly enhance the traffic in that area. We think we've got a great plan there. We've submitted it to WAMPO. We've got some funding from WAMPO that's already assured in funding year 2022. We've also applied to a new program at the DOT that we think, not this round of applications, but again in the spring, we may have a little bit better chance of getting even more federal and state funds in this project. But the first thing we have to do is get it into engineering, because it needs to be nearer to shovel ready in order to qualify for some of these programs. We have deadlines, and today is the day to get started on
So
preliminary
you want us
engineering.
to table this, is what you're saying?
So we need to move ahead on preliminary engineering. We have a contract here from Trans Systems, $259, $489 and 85 cents. That's about a little less than 8% of the total construction project.
Caroline.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve the preliminary engineering contract with Trans Systems for the North Andover Road improvements in the amount of $259,489.85.
Second it.
Motion by Caroline, second by Mike to approve the engineering agreement as presented. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 12. You're up.
Mr. Mayor, Council, if you recall, in the development of the 2020 budget, it was approved, you approved the addition of a community service officer for the police department, which would be a dual-trained civilian employee that would be both a dispatcher and a station officer. However, part of that was that you recommended that the police department conduct a staffing study by an outside agency, similar to what the fire department did a couple years ago. We went out and took proposals from, I located and took proposals from 3 different entities that do this type of studies for police department. I found 3. The costs varied greatly, but fortunately, in my opinion, the most qualified individual was also the one with the lowest bid. That was Dr. Eric Frisch, PhD out of North Texas University. My recommendation, the council approve the PD to contract with Mr. Frisch, Dr. Frisch, to conduct a staffing study at a cost of $6,233. Dr. Frisch will develop a comprehensive 5-year strategic staffing plan for the police department. In addition, Dr. Frisch will make recommendations for improved police operations and identify efficiencies that may be gained through the use of civilian employees and modern technology. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement contract with Dr. Eric J. Fritsch, University of North Texas, to perform a staffing study for the police department at a cost of $6,233.
Second.
All right, we'll go with a motion by Greg and a second by, I think you beat him to the punch, Caroline.
I did too.
To approve this police department staffing study as presented. Further discussion?
Quick question for Chief.
That's me.
What do you think the chances after the study would be that the budget for the police department would go down?
What?
I'm just asking. It's one of the biggest budget line items in our, just wanted to get a laugh. I'm kidding, don't answer that.
I've been here 19 years, and it's never gone down. Not even slightly. It's just like a straight line. But we are one of the safest communities.
We are.
right.
We are.
Thank you, sir.
Just had to rib you a
Do
little
you
bit.
want to live in the 38th
Further
best city in the United States or
discussion.
not?
That's right.
Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 13, so with Mr. Schwan vacating, I actually had him appointed to the Salary Review Committee. I've nominated Troy to take his place, unless anybody else is dying to. Do you know the dates and times of when your first meeting is?
Just thinking about that, I think I've sent an email about it to
Okay,
you
well,
and
you guys can
Greg.
coordinate that later
I think
then.
it's
I
early
have a few
December.
other committees, and I have multiple things, so I need to know at some point soon.
Sure,
You're
yeah,
only
and-
on
and
like
it-
10 committees, so.
It's about a 2 to 3 hour commitment, so.
Yeah,
we
but
can
I
be
have a bunch
flexible.
of those on certain days. If you can, do you have a day?
It's December 3rd.
It's you and Greg,
I believe.
right?
December 3rd.
December 3rd?
What day is that?
So, December 3rd,
Yes,
WAMPO,
Yeah.
I have a project selection committee meeting
a
for
Tuesday.
the presentations for WAMPO from 9 a.m. to noon on the 3rd.
What are you doing at 1?
I'll be fine at 1. I know. Oh, wait, did you just make it 1? Okay. That's,
No, I was just joking. You can make it whenever you want to.
that's fine. I just want
Why
to.
don't you guys
So the
discuss that
afternoon of
later, but
December 3rd.
Sure.
I would need a motion by somebody to.
Mayor, I would
approve my
move to
appointment.
approve the recommendation of Troy to the Salary Review Committee.
Second.
By Greg,
No, motion by.
or sorry, motion by CR, second by Greg, to approve my appointment of Troy Tabor for the Salary Review Committee in place of Brian Schwan. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, we have an executive session in front of us. Who do we need in this? And us? We're all invited? Okay. And how long? Okay.
So move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, you get a motion by CR, second by Troy to go into executive session for preliminary discussions related to the acquisition of real property per KSA 75 4319B subsection 6 Session will include the governing body, the city administrator, the community development director, and the city attorney for approximately 10 minutes. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Felt longer.
Okay, council, I need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Greg, second by Troy to come out of executive session. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any motions on the table?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjust the compensation on the Andover Road bike path on US 54 to Central Avenue to Fred W. Deppner III in the amount of $10,472.71.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike and second by our CR to approve the land acquisition purchase for the hike bike bed path as presented. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Caroline, you're up for member items.
Good night, all. That's it.
Troy.
What? You always have a bunch.
Troy.
I guess just real quick. First of all, that was one of the most intense meetings I've been at in 8 years. Tonight, we've had a couple other ones that were pretty excitable, like the 21st Street, when everybody, felt like we were hurting their children, kind of thing.
You missed some good ones over the years, trust me.
So tonight was very difficult and challenging, and when decisions like this are made, it's supposed to be that way, I think, for us. One of the things that has been thrown at us a few times is that we don't speak for or listen to the people of Andover, or we don't listen to all of Andover, or we only... Really? Am I done? So, did my wife do that? I'm just asking. So, because she does that to me at home. I'm just kidding. She does. She just yells at me. Anyway, so it's been brought, it's been said a few times that we don't listen to all of Andover. And I think the thought of that statement has been more that that we don't listen to people that are, fearful or have issues, and then that we don't make our decisions solely based on the way that they would want us to go. I think when people say you don't listen to the people in Andover, that's what the expectation is. But unfortunately, we on the council don't have that luxury. We have to look at all 14,000 people in the city, the growth, the comprehensive development plan, and as amongst all kinds of committees and things that we are a part of that aren't necessarily out there directly for people to see. So it's our job, or at least I feel like it's my job, to make sure that when anybody brings up an issue or a fear, like I like to say today, that I do everything in my darn power to research it, understand it, talk about it, get advice on, so that when I'm up here and I make a decision, I just assume that everyone's the same way here, that it's actually very much vetted, understood, and while it might not make some people happy, we know that. We know it's not going to make everyone happy, and as a friend of mine said recently, the longer you've been on council or mayor, the more people that you've pissed off, and the fewer votes you're going to get anyway. So you better just make the right choice and just not expect to eventually get voted in again. And I don't think any of us are career politicians, and we don't expect that every decision that we're going to make is going to earn votes, because that's not why we're here. We're here to do the very best for the city. And I think that we've done that tonight, as contentious as it was. And I don't think people that haven't been behind this bench understand how much pressure and stressful, and sometimes you just want to cry up here when somebody's talking about their children, either being hurt or not being able to get the education they need. But we still have to make the right decision, and it's based on what we see as the right decision with everything that's given to us, more than just the emotions of those that are the audience that are upset at us in that moment. You can ring the bell for me to shut up now. Okay.
TR.
Well, I believe that Troy is very accurate. I've made enough people unhappy, and we had a good race. I congratulate Ronnie Price, the winner, who's sitting in the back of the room, and I hope that we do everything that we can do to make his reign successful. That's it.
Have nothing.
Mike.
I want to say to Brian, it's been a pleasure being on council with him the last 2 years. So I hope him the best of what's going on with him in his life, and just wish him the best. I also want to concur with Troy on this was, I don't know which one this was. This was probably last year sometime when we had people up there that were talking about that we weren't responding back to their emails. And I think at first I was maybe a little scared to email them back if I wasn't going to say the right thing. But I think just acknowledging their email sometimes satisfies them.
Said thanks for the
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So, and ever since that, I have responded back to people with, hey, I'll check on this, because I really do want to check on it. And and like you said, some people probably think we don't do our research, but I was calling, apartment complexes myself, and saying, what do you have? Are you full? How much do you charge? And because I knew that people were going to be upset, and that's the last thing that I want people to do in our town that is growing. That we do need more areas to live and more different places to live, and not just a single family home. Not everybody can afford that.
How many apartments did you say are actually open at Sunset?
There are 3 this week, but at the end of the week they're gone. They are 100% full.
So that's an obvious market-driven
Yes,
need.
and the manager there mentioned that as soon as one comes open, it's gone. They have a 3-bedroom, which that's the biggest one they have, that's opening up next month, and it's already spoken for. So, we do have a need for it, and we don't have that on the north side of town, and I think we're growing. That's what it is.
Growing pains, yeah.
That's right.
Staff have anything else? You better not.
Chiefs?
But I'm going to ask. Okay, let's get out of here.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion, you got them, by Troy, second by Caroline. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Day. If you're not a Y member, you can buy a day pass to enjoy this summer fun. Are you a golfer? Andover has 3 courses. The Andover Municipal Course is a beautiful 9-hole